Chapter 154. Yellow Cattle was excited. How heaven-defying would a material that could only be refined after the sacred tree had bloomed hundreds of flowers. It was so overwhelmed with emotions that it wanted to shout out loud. It must be the mother of gold. Only the home of myriad gods could nurture such a piece. Kunlun was also known as the home of myriad gods. What's the mother of gold? Chu Feng looked at it suspiciously. Naturally, it's the mother of all rare metals. It's a supreme material for refining weapons. According to its words, the legendary copper essence, silver essence, and immortal gold could not compare to the mother of gold. This was the most primordial metal. Yellow Cattle had long since heard that there was a piece of mother of gold in Mount Kunlun. It had been refined into a weapon by the Queen Mother of West, but it had been destroyed in the Great War. Yellow Cattle guessed that the material had returned to its primordial form. This mother of gold from Kunlun is also known as the Queen Mother of West Gold, it said solemnly. This material was too famous. There were even records of it in the world it came from. Yellow Cattle secretly raised its hoof as it spoke, preparing to strike the back of Chu Feng's head. It clearly wanted to rob him. Swoosh! Chu Feng's divine sense was sharp. He moved 10 meters away and said, "I'm warning you, watch out for my flying sword." With a clang, the scarlet flying knife the size of a palm emitted a brilliant red radiance. It hovered in the air and aimed at Yellow Ox. Yellow Cattle laughed dryly. It looked very crafty, but its voice was still as tender as before. "I just wanted to see if you've improved. Not bad, your vigilance is very high." Chu Feng looked at it with disdain. How could it not know that this fellow was starting to feel vexed after seeing this heaven-defying material? Hundreds of flower buds bloomed on the sacred tree. Pollen sprinkled down, causing the black outer layer to peel off completely, revealing a snow-white material. It looked like mutton fat jade, but at the same time it also looked like metal. It looked rather warm and sparkling, very extraordinary. "I say, will those beast kings fight to the death if we squander so many flower buds?" Chu Feng whispered. "It's okay. There's still pollen in those blooming flowers. Not all of it has fallen." Yellow Cattle was also feeling guilty. They glanced at the foot of the mountain, afraid that a beast king would rush up. If that happened, they would probably become envious and start a fight. After all, even it was tempted. Walala! At this time, the weaponry refinement sacred tree swayed again. The blooming flowers scattered pollen onto the silver-white material, trying to make it change shape. The black skin was too thick, and there was only a small piece of the snow-white, mother of gold. He estimated that he could only refine 1 diamond chakram. Originally, Chu Feng had wanted to refine a few more. However, as the pollen fell, it did not transform. What's going on? Chu Feng was puzzled. It was clear that the refinement sacred tree was also annoyed. It had continuously bloomed 100 flowers, yet it still could not transform. This was too strange, and it felt that it had lost a lot of face. Pop, pop, pop! In the next moment, the remaining flower buds bloomed. Some were as big as a fist, while others were as big as a bowl. All of the petals were sparkling and translucent, but they were of different colors. The whole ancient tree was rustling as the pollen fell like rain. All of it was concentrated on that piece of snow-white material. 200, 300 in the end, the entire tree was in full bloom. Hundreds of sacred flowers were swaying gently, emitting a myriad of colors. Finally, the snow-white material had taken shape. It was constantly twisting, as if it was being tempered thousands of times. Yellow Cattle had long since become dumbfounded. What kind of situation was this? It had never heard of such a thing. The first refinement of a primordial material required a tree full of flowers? This had never happened before. It had only heard of the thunderous breathing technique's founder when he refined an ultimate treasure. However, this was not a primordial material, but an invincible weapon that had been nurtured for tens of thousands of years. This had allowed it to advance to the ultimate state. Ding! A snow-white diamond chakram fell to the ground, producing a melodious sound as it fell. A piece of rock on the ground was shattered into pieces. Swoosh! Chu Feng took advantage of the yellow cattle's absent-minded state to rush over and pick up the chakram, afraid that it would fight over it. Why has it become lighter? Chu Feng was astonished. The current diamond chakram was only about 50 jin, which was a far cry from the previous 10,000 jin. Yellow cattle came back to its senses and rushed over with a mooing sound. Its eyes were blazing as it stared fixedly at the diamond chakram and said, "Let me see if it has become an ultimate weapon or not." "That's not right. Why does it feel like a rough embryo? It has form but no spirit?" It was suspicious. If it really was a weapon of that level, it would have long since emitted a terrifying aura. Yellow cattle took it and carefully observed it. A puzzled expression appeared on its face because it could not see anything special about this weapon. Hundreds of flowers in full bloom and countless pollen pouring down in torrents. Such a spectacular scene is rarely seen since ancient times. How many people have seen it before? Even if it can't become an ultimate weapon, it shouldn't be a problem for it to turn into a weapon with spirituality. But why do I feel that it has form but no spirit? Yellow cattle was doubtful. This material is a bit strange. It is not the legendary Golden Mother and is not suitable to be refined into a weapon, the refinement sacred tree said helplessly. It had consumed too much energy. The flowers on the tree had bloomed and the pollen had poured down in torrents, but it still could not make the diamond chakram develop spirituality. It was too strange. Don't tell me that this is the legendary ultimate trash. Yellow cattle was doubtful. It should be, the refinement sacred tree said. Some materials, such as Golden Mother, primordial gold, universe stone, void flame, the appearance of any one of them would alarm all the sections. Even those holy lands would shed all pretense of cordiality to fight over it because it had the possibility of being refined into an ultimate weapon. At the same time, there were a few strange materials that did not seem to be inferior to the Golden Mother, void flame, or universe stone. However, when it was truly refined, it would only become a rough embryo. It would always have form but no spirit. According to reason, when hundreds of flowers bloomed and all the pollen sprinkled down, this weapon should have changed. However, it was still indifferent. When Chu Feng heard the yellow cattle's detailed explanation, he was speechless. In the end, he had only picked up a piece of trash? Moreover, it was the best of the best, ultimate trash. Chu Feng pinched it. This diamond chakram's material was incomparably hard. Even with his current king-level strength, he could not damage it in the slightest. He took out the black dagger to carve on it, but it was still useless. In the end, he steeled his heart and waved the black dagger with all his might. Clang! Sparks flew in all directions. A large crack appeared on the black dagger. This shocked Chu Feng, but at the same time, he felt his heart ache. One had to know that this black dagger had always been invincible. It could even block flying swords and was not afraid of the imperial sword technique's slashes. Its hardness was beyond imagination. In the end, it was actually damaged. Chu Feng lowered his head to look at the diamond chakram. He found that there was not even a scratch on it. It was still warm and sparkling, white and soft. Trash is this hard? Chu Feng was doubtful. No matter how you look at it, it has the word ultimate in it. It's just hard. It can't evolve, can't enlarge or shrink, and can't give birth to terrifying power, said the yellow cattle. It was no longer envious. I don't believe it. Let's keep this ultimate trash for now, said Chu Feng as he put the diamond chakram on his wrist. Afterwards, he shamelessly asked the refinement sacred tree to help him repair the black dagger. Otherwise, it would be too painful. After all, this was the weapon he was most comfortable with at the moment. The black dagger was taken away by the branches, and pollen began to fall. No more, no less. Exactly 10 flowers poured pollen on the dagger. The black dagger flowed with a black light and emitted crackling sounds. In the end, it became smaller. It was less than a foot long. Rather than calling it a sword, it would be more accurate to call it a dagger. There were some black scraps on the ground, leaving behind the essence and the dregs. Chu Feng was astonished but immediately laughed. He took out the red flying dagger with a blushing face and asked the refinement sacred tree to help him refine it. That was because this was a divine tree that could refine the impurities in weapons and leave behind the essence. The refinement sacred tree didn't refuse. It brought the palm-sized red flying dagger into the treetop. This time, there were 15 flowers swaying in the wind and scattering pollen to refine the flying dagger. Chu Feng was astonished. This flying dagger was actually made of better material than the black dagger. In the end, the flying dagger became shorter and shorter than a palm. Some of the red material fell to the ground. It became even more sparkling and translucent, and seemed to be full of spirituality. Chu Feng tried it out and, as expected, he became more and more proficient. Previously, the attack range was 130 to 140 meters. Now it had increased to 160 meters. At this time, a group of beast kings began to ascend the mountain. The black yak was laughing loudly in the distance as if he had discovered something extraordinary. Chu Feng immediately felt a sense of guilt. Anyone who saw a tree full of blooming flowers would be envious and ask questions. It would be fine if he had really obtained the Golden Mother, but in the end it was an ultimate trash. "Senior, can you make the blooming flowers close?" he asked in a low voice. The refinement sacred tree swayed, and the flowers on the tree finally closed and became flower bud. Yellow Cow was speechless. At the same time, he understood the refinement sacred tree's mood. The majestic sacred tree had caused such a commotion on its first attack. The blooming flowers on the tree made people think that an invincible weapon was about to appear, but in the end it was a piece of trash. The sacred tree probably felt that it had lost face and decided to close its hundreds of flowers. "What weapon did you guys refine?" The black yak laughed happily. He was hugging a piece of copper that weighed hundreds of kilograms and said in high spirits, "This might be the legendary copper essence." The other beast kings were also happy and satisfied because they had all dug up something good. Yellow Cow curled his lips and said, "Chu Feng picked up a piece of trash and refined it into a crude embryo. It's useless." Everyone was suspicious. In the end, the refinement sacred tree said, "It's a rare piece of trash." Ha ha! The group of beast kings couldn't stop laughing. Chu Feng felt quite awkward. Finally, the group of beast kings started to refine weapons. The materials they found were enough to make 5 or 6 flower buds bloom and pour out pollen. Compared to ordinary metals, these were treasures. Chu Feng squatted on the ground and studied the black powder. It was the outer skin of the snow-white material. He found that it was very light, almost as light as sand. This surprised him. The material that weighed more than 5,000 kilograms was now only 50 kilograms. Where did the rest of the mass go? He was puzzled. He suspected that the refinement sacred tree had absorbed it, but it didn't seem like it. In the end, he stood up helplessly. The materials the black yak found were excellent. There were 10 flower buds in total. The refinement sacred tree forged a purple blade according to its requirements. This purple blade was comparable to Chu Feng's black dagger. It was indestructible. Chu Feng asked, "Yellow Cow, we're going to the west soon. Aren't you going to refine a weapon? Why don't you transform into your human form and I'll let you use my black dagger?" "No need, I have a weapon." Yellow Cow was very calm. The group of beast kings was very happy and left in satisfaction. After returning to the Ox King Palace, Chu Feng began to study the diamond chakram. He carefully weighed it and found that it was exactly 108 kilograms. This was a number that Taoists paid particular attention to. He tried repeatedly but couldn't damage the diamond chakram in the slightest. Finally, Chu Feng circulated his special breathing technique. A mysterious energy filled his body as he tore at the diamond chakram with both hands. With a buzzing sound, the mysterious energy produced by the breathing technique was poured into the diamond chakram. It immediately became extremely heavy and weighed more than 5,000 kilograms. Chu Feng was astonished. This was too strange. Following that, he poured it in again and continuously circulated his breathing technique, sending the mysterious energy into the diamond chakram. In the end, he felt that the chakram weighed more than 50,000 kilograms. One had to know that such a small chakram could be so heavy. It was shocking. Chu Feng stood on the mountain peak and threw the diamond chakram out. It immediately broke through the sound barrier and emitted a terrifying explosion. This was a test of its power. Boom! There was a mountain level opposite the Ox King Palace. If not for the fact that there were no mutant trees here, it would have long since been occupied by humans. In the end, the entire mountain peak was smashed into nothingness. Chu Feng sucked in a breath of cold air and only came back to his senses after a long while. He called out to the crow, "Quick, carry me over." He hurriedly went to find the diamond chakram. This was definitely a great killing weapon, and he was afraid of losing it. The crow rushed over with him on its back. Chu Feng used his powerful divine instincts to search for it and found it in a crack between the rocks. He picked it up. It was still as lustrous and white as before. He didn't know what material it was made of, but it still weighed 108 kilograms. There wasn't a single scratch on its surface, and it was glowing with a snowy white luster. Chu Feng couldn't bear to part with it. This so-called ultimate trash wasn't as simple as he had imagined. If used well, it would definitely be a great killing weapon. He was full of anticipation for the trip to the Vatican. With the diamond chakram's protection, he might be able to make a great contribution at the crucial moment. Before this, Chu Feng had discussed with the two oxen and was ready to set off at any time. "What did you do? Where's that mountain?" The black yak and yellow cattle were startled and ran out. They looked at the opposite side with bewildered expressions. The outside world was in an uproar. Chu Feng had killed a bird king and said in a relaxed tone that he had undergone a heavenly tribulation. This news shook the whole world. Even the foreign countries reported this matter. After all, this was the second beast king he had killed. It was impossible for it not to cause a huge commotion. Many people in the West cried out in alarm and once again called for Chu Feng to go to the West and suppress the Black Dragon and the other terrifying beast. At the same time, there were also people in the West who deliberately stirred up trouble. They shouted at the Qilin king from afar, asking if he still held Chu Feng in contempt. Not long ago, this beast king had mocked Chu Feng in the West, saying that he had never heard of Chu Feng before. If Chu Feng dared to go to Europe, he would teach him how to behave. Now, someone had shown him Chu Feng's latest battle achievements. The Qilin king was still full of arrogance and disdain. He said, "I'm fighting at the Vatican. The people here are all top-grade beast kings. Who is he? Would he dare to set foot here in his lifetime? I'm afraid he doesn't have the qualifications." Similarly, the human expert named Augustus was also asked if he valued the young man named Chu Feng in the East. "My opponent is the peerless Lion King of Africa. What did he kill? A weasel? A woodpecker? What a joke." This golden-haired human expert was extremely conceited and full of disdain. This immediately caused a huge uproar in both the East and West, igniting people's emotions and causing a commotion in many places. Just like last time, Augustus was full of enmity towards Chu Feng. Chapter 155. Kowloon was vast and majestic. In front of the Ox King Palace, the black yak and the yellow cattle were in a daze. The mountain in front of them had completely disappeared. When the smoke and dust had settled, the mountain was missing a section. Chu Feng laughed dryly and said, "I was careless and smashed the top of the mountain." The two oxen were dumbfounded as they stared at him endlessly. Wasn't this a little too ridiculous? That mountain was huge, but it was smashed into nothingness in the blink of an eye? How ferocious was this? Yellow Cow stared at the snow-white diamond chakram on his wrist. It revealed a suspicious expression and asked, "Is that it?" Chu Feng nodded with a smile. He was very satisfied. So what if it was trash? It was powerful enough to destroy mountains and split the earth. Even a beast king would not be able to withstand it. Whoosh! The black yak rushed over and immediately snatched it. He flipped it over and said suspiciously, "I don't find it special. How can this thing flatten a mountain? It's already recognized its owner. You can't use it." Chu Feng replied calmly. The black yak was full of disdain. He straightened his back and placed one of his front hooves on his waist. "Recognize me as your master? Do you think it's a myth? This world only talks about evolution. I'm not superstitious." "If you're not superstitious, then how did you become a demon?" Chu Feng said in disdain. "Brat, you're asking for a beating, aren't you?" The black yak rolled up his sleeves, wrinkling his cloak. The yellow cattle snatched the diamond chakram with a swoosh. It weighed the chakram in its hand continuously and then circulated its special breathing technique. In the blink of an eye, it had grasped the key to the technique. Then, it threw it with all its might. A loud bang came from a nearby mountain peak. Smoke and dust filled the sky, and in the blink of an eye, the mountain peak disappeared. The black yak was dumbfounded. Even a beast king wouldn't be able to withstand this thing, right? Shaving off a mountain peak with a single strike was truly frightening. "Quick, get him back!" The black yak shouted at the crow. Chu Feng followed him personally. He couldn't use his divine instinct to avoid danger in advance in the Kunlun Mountains, but it didn't affect his ability to search for objects. Following this, the area around the Ox King Palace became lively. In order to study the diamond chakram, the two oxen went crazy and continuously threw it out at supersonic speeds. Rumble! 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 Not long after, the surrounding dozen or so mountains disappeared. The two oxen were still not satisfied and set their target further away. "Rumble! Blackie, what are you doing? You've crossed the line. I'm warning you, you can demolish your own home, but don't destroy my abode or I'll fight you to the death." "Old Black, do you want to destroy the mountain and fight to the death with me?" "Bull Demon, do you have nothing better to do?" Actually, he was still quite far away from those beast kings. He had only shaved off a few of their mountain peaks, but the commotion was too great and alarmed them. "My apologies, this king has recently gained some insights into the demon ox fist. I overdid it." The black yak laughed dryly, using this as a cover. "What a treasure! It looks light and agile, but when it comes down to it, it has a violent temper. This diamond chakram suits my temperament. Brat, since you already have a flying sword, why don't you give it to me?" The black yak wanted to be greedy. Whoosh! Chu Feng reacted quickly and snatched the chakram back, saying, "Black Boss, do you want to test the might of this diamond chakram? You dare." The black yak retreated. He was truly apprehensive. That was because he had carefully studied it just now. This item's might was terrifying. An item weighing tens of thousands of kilograms could transform into a bracelet and fly out at supersonic speed. No one would be able to withstand it. "You can try it on the Antelope King," Yellow Cattle said. "Right, I still haven't settled the debt with this grandson." The black yak nodded like an old hoodlum. He waved his hooves and said, "Let's go." The crow spread its wings and landed on a beautiful mountain peak with the three on it. A splendid palace was situated here. The Antelope King was drinking tea outside the palace. He was sitting on a stone chair at the top of the mountain, looking down at the surrounding mountains. He was in a good mood. When he saw the two oxen and Chu Feng appear, the Antelope King's scalp went numb. His good mood was completely gone. He couldn't afford to offend these three masters. "Ox King Chu Feng." He hurriedly stood up and ordered his subordinates to serve tea. He was very courteous and attentive. "We're here to discuss compensation with you." The black yak was very direct. No problem. Dig up whichever tree in my medicine garden you like. The Antelope King was very heroic. He had no choice. With 3 king-level entities blocking his way, he had no choice but to lower his head. The fruits on your mutant trees have long since been plucked clean. Who knows when they'll bear fruit again? Moreover, what if they die during transplanting? Let them grow here for now. We'll come back when they bear fruit again, the black yak said. The Antelope King's heart was bleeding. He knew that this wasn't just empty talk. At that time, his medicine garden would be open to the 2 oxen. The loss would be too great. Don't we have the Woodpecker King's medicine garden as compensation? He asked with a guilty conscience. The black yak glared at him and said, That mountain was conquered by my brother, Chu Feng. It should belong to him. You participated in the siege, so naturally, you should be compensated. That's enough. Yellow Cow smiled warmly and stopped the black yak. He turned to the Antelope King and said, Today, I want to ask for your help with a small matter. What is it? The Antelope King asked. Yellow Ox's face was full of smiles. His voice was tender and innocent, seemingly harmless to both man and beast. He said, It's very simple. Help Chu Feng examine his weapon and see if it's ruined. No problem, this is simple. The Antelope King agreed immediately and revealed a smile. Wasn't it just appraising a weapon? Even if he wasn't good at it, wouldn't he just say a few words? However, his smile soon disappeared. He felt his hair stand on end because he saw Chu Feng weighing the diamond chakram and hinting for him to stand further away. He was clearly telling him that he was going to attack him. Don't. Let's talk things over. Don't attack. The Antelope King was anxious. Don't misunderstand. I only want to test the power of my weapon. Stand further away and do your best to resist. No. The Antelope King cried out miserably. That was because the diamond chakram had broken through the sound barrier. The Antelope King reacted quickly. He moved his body sideways and used his arms to block the attack, but he was still struck. His arms emitted a cracking sound. They couldn't block the diamond chakram and were completely fractured. Thump! In the end, the diamond chakram smashed into one of his broken horns, shattering it. The Antelope King fell to the ground, motionless. The diamond chakram flew out and directly shattered a small mountain in the distance. Yellow Cow and the Crow went to look for the diamond chakram. Chu Feng and the black yak rushed over to check on the Antelope King's condition. They found him convulsing, but fortunately, he wasn't dead. However, when he touched its skull, apart from the broken horn that was completely shattered, even the skull had cracks. Old Antelope, wake up. I didn't do it on purpose. I'm sorry, I don't want the compensation anymore. Chu Feng shouted, feeling very guilty. Brat, are you trying to murder me? The black yak was speechless. I didn't even use my full strength. It was a very conservative attempt, Chu Feng whispered. The black yak was also astonished. This diamond chakram was indeed a great killing weapon. Chu Feng did some preliminary calculations and realized how terrifying it was. It was faster than a bullet, and its mass was more than 100,000 times that of a bullet. Rockets, cannonballs, and armor-piercing bullets were simply too weak compared to it. They weren't even on the same level. Fortunately, it didn't hit the top of his head. Otherwise, he would have exploded, the black yak said in a low voice. Killing a beast king for no reason was a big deal in Mount Kunlun. It would incur public anger. I was holding back, I didn't use any force at all, Chu Feng said. When the Antelope King woke up, he found himself lying on a jade bed in the palace. Then, he saw the 2 oxen and Chu Feng smiling at him. This caused his hair to stand on end and his scalp to go numb. He finally understood why Chu Feng was called Demon King Chu by the outside world. Was this the result of a simple test of weapons? He had almost been torn into pieces. Brother Antelope, let's forget about the past. I've made you suffer today. Chu Feng moved closer and said as gently as possible. The antelope looked at his snow-white teeth and then at the sparkling bracelet on his wrist. He didn't feel any warmth or kindness from Chu Feng and felt goosebumps all over his body. I'll be recuperating for a few days. If you're not busy, don't come over. The Antelope King braced himself and spoke tactfully. His meaning was to tell Chu Feng to stay away for the next few days and not to appear again. That was because he couldn't stand the fright. Every time he saw Chu Feng, his hair would stand on end. Chu Feng's smile was like a demon's grin. Chu Feng turned and left after being despised by the antelope. The black yak stayed behind to intimidate the antelope, telling him to keep it a secret and not to talk about it. Finally, the yellow cattle wrapped things up. After placating the antelope, he taught him a set of palm techniques called antelope hanging horn. The Antelope King's mood was complicated. He felt that it would be best if he never saw Demon King Chu again. 2 days later, Chu Feng gave up. He had planted seeds on several of Mount Kunlun's peaks but couldn't let them germinate. That was because the soil here was similar to Mount Tai, a tricolored soil. The earth is still recovering. In the future, not to mention 4-colored soil, 5-colored soil, even 9-colored soil will appear. Yellow Cattle was very calm. According to him, the fruits of those mysterious ancient trees would continuously increase in medicinal efficacy. Some of the famed mountains have owners now and have been occupied. But when the divine trees completely recover and the fruits show their heaven-defying medicinal efficacy, rivers of blood will flow and wars will erupt. 2 days later, they prepared to leave for Europe. Zhou Quan came to send them off. He pulled Chu Feng reluctantly with snot and tears running down his face. The main reason was that he missed human society and wanted to go back and take a look. The black yak promised to let him go back and take a look when they returned from the west. In the western region, there was a mysterious passage that led directly to Europe. However, it wasn't in Mount Kunlun but in Xinjiang's Turpan Basin. Chu Feng and the others set out on their crow, traversing countless great mountains. Finally, they arrived at Xinjiang. In the basin, there was a giant poplar tree rooted there. It was taller than many of the mountain peaks and was at least 3,000 meters tall. This was originally a 1,000-year-old tree. After the upheavals, it lay dormant for a short period of time. Then, it began to grow crazily and transformed into a tree king. It had already developed its own consciousness and was no longer afraid of beast kings. Poplar Tree King, we're only passing by. We mean no harm, the black yak said. Please. The 3,000-meter-tall poplar tree swayed and let out a thunderous rumble. Its divine instincts were extraordinary and naturally knew that these 3 creatures were not to be trifled with. They were all kings. The front was shrouded in dense mist. It was obviously a white mist, but one couldn't even see their fingers in front of them. Be careful, we'll walk together. Don't separate, the black yak reminded. Finally, after passing through this misty region, they discovered that the world had changed. They had left the Turpan Basin and arrived in a completely new area. What is this place? Chu Feng found himself standing in a mountainous region. It should be Greece, Yellow Cattle replied. In the past, beast kings had passed through this misty region and traveled between Greece and the Turpan Basin. If I remember correctly, the lair of that beast king called the Chilan King is in Greece? Chu Feng asked. Yellow Cattle nodded. Yes, that's right. He lives under Mount Olympus and is suspected to be a scarlet dragon. His strength is tyrannical and many people call him the fire god. Augustus and that Chilan king don't even spare you a glance. They spouted nonsense and said that you have no right to go to the Vatican. The black yak laughed mischievously. Black boss, do you have any suggestions? Chu Feng asked. Didn't that Western dragon say that if you dare come to Europe, he would teach you how to behave? I think we should teach him how to be a beast first and attack his lair. I like it. Yellow Cattle raised his hooves in approval. Chu Feng said with a smile. I heard that this type of dragon loves to collect treasures. Let's go and help him take inventory. With the three of them together, it was impossible for them to live peacefully and peacefully. Gangsters and bandits were nothing compared to the three of them. After walking out of the mountainous region, Chu Feng gazed at the city in the distance. He then glanced at the black yak, who was standing upright with a copper blade on his back, and Yellow Ox, whose entire body was glowing with golden fur. This won't do. We'll be on the headlines before we even reach our destination. You two should transform into your human forms. It's a small matter. The black yak naturally had no objections. Yellow Ox was very conflicted. He was extremely unwilling. However, he couldn't resist the persuasion of the man and cow. In the end, he also nodded in agreement. That night the black yak ransacked a store. When he returned, Chu Feng's jaw almost dropped to the ground. He didn't recognize this place at all. Chapter 156. What do you think? Am I handsome and heroic enough? The black yak held the cigar in his mouth, looking calm and confident. Chu Feng nodded solemnly and said, Black Boss, you're just like your name. Now you're even more suitable. You should sing another song. I haven't been a big brother for many years. That was because no matter how one looked at him, this fellow looked like a hoodlum. He was born valiant, and that pair of sunglasses, swept-back hair, and cigar as thick as a carrot, it was as if he was telling everyone that he was the head of the underworld. Brat, what do you mean by that? The black yak didn't like what he was hearing. No matter what, he was still a bull with great ambitions. He still wanted to become a sage ancestor. Yellow Cattle said disdainfully, Hurry up and change your clothes. You'll definitely alarm the international police if you walk on the streets like this. No matter how you look at it, you look like a criminal who has escaped from prison. The black yak was so angry that his nose was almost crooked. He had thought that his clothes were quite good, but in the end, he was mocked and criticized as worthless. In the end, he still changed and said resentfully, Fortunately, this king prepared a few more. He changed into a swallow-tailed coat and a bow tie. He said proudly, What do you think? Chu Feng rubbed his forehead. A hoodlum dressed in a refined manner would be even more frightening. It was truly out of place. To be honest, the black yak's appearance in human form wasn't bad. His face was as sharp as a knife, his eyebrows were thick, his eyes were big, and his facial features were distinct. However, he also had the air of a bandit. No matter how one looked at him, he didn't look like a good person. He was too valiant. Following that, the black yak changed into a trendy tight-fitting shirt. He put on cropped pants and a pair of flip-flops. This posture made him look like a local ruffian. Finally, Yellow Cattle couldn't take it anymore and said, A natural antagonist. There's no cure. Chu Feng sighed, Black Boss, you should wear that hoodlum outfit. That temperament suits you better. Moo! The black yak glared at them. He was so angry that white smoke was coming out of his nose. These two were too unkind. Even if he looked like a gangster boss, couldn't they be more tactful? Don't laugh at me. These are yours. Wear them yourself. The black yak angrily threw a pile of clothes at Yellow Cattle. Chu Feng's eyes widened. This pile of clothes ranged from jackets to suits to princess dresses. There was simply everything that one could think of. It was really a wide variety. The black yak took out a snow-white princess dress and handed it to Yellow Cattle. He said, This dress is not bad. It's very exquisite and it's worth at least 10,000 euros. It's the most expensive dress in that shop. It suits you very well. Yellow Cow's eyes flickered as he coldly said, Do you really think I can't beat you? Moo! The next moment, his front hooves lit up. He was about to give the black yak a round of demon ox fists. All right, hurry up and transform. Don't waste time. Chu Feng hurriedly stopped it. He was also looking forward to seeing what the yellow cattle would look like after transforming into a human. Chi. Yellow cattle transformed. A ball of golden light enveloped it. It was hazy and holy. In the end, it transformed into the appearance of a little boy. It was just too beautiful. He had a head of long golden hair that hung loosely over his shoulders. His eyes were like gems, and his eyelashes were extremely long. His lips were red and his teeth were white. He was simply like a porcelain doll. "Haha, so beautiful!" Chu Feng laughed. He couldn't hold back anymore. He walked over and directly ruffled his golden hair, making it a mess. Yellow Cattle was furious. He pushed Chu Feng's hand away and said angrily, "Let go of me, Chu Feng. I'm warning you. If you dare to disrespect me again, I'll fight you to the death." Chu Feng laughed. He finally understood why he had transformed so unwillingly. It was because he was too small and looked like he was carved out of jade. It really made people want to pinch him. Yellow Cattle blinked his big eyes. His skin was snow-white, and his hair was smooth and soft. He looked like he was only 5 or 6 years old. People couldn't help but want to tease him. Chu Feng didn't listen to his threats. He pinched his little face and laughed mischievously. "You have quite a big temper. Actually, this appearance is not bad. Don't be embarrassed. You look just like me when I was young. Just as handsome." Yellow Cattle was angry. He pushed his hand away and warned him once again that if he continued to disrespect him, he would definitely fight to the death. The Black Yak was secretly laughing at the side. His snow-white teeth were emitting a brilliant luster. In the end, Yellow Cattle chose a boy's outfit and put it on with great embarrassment. He was very dissatisfied because such a small body didn't match his status as a king. They entered the city and prepared to rest for the night. Afterwards, they would raid the Qilin king's lair. This city was of medium size, but it was prosperous enough. Neon lights flickered at night. Even at night, there were still many pedestrians on the street. The combination of the three was really strange. Although it wasn't 100%, it was still close to the point of turning heads. There was an outrageously beautiful child with a head full of golden hair, a handsome young man with an Asian face, and a big hoodlum with a cigar in his mouth and sunglasses on the street. Someone almost called the police. There was even an old Caucasian lady who rushed up and loudly rebuked the Black Yak, wanting to protect Yellow Cattle. The Black Yak's face immediately turned as black as the bottom of a pot. Who did he offend? He was being discriminated against on the street. Did they really think he was a gangster? He was so angry that he wanted to explode. Chu Feng hurriedly tried to stop her. He communicated with the old lady in English, and it took him a long time to understand. During the rest of the journey, the Black Yak was so angry that he wanted to curse out loud. This was not the first time something like this had happened. He touched his face and said, "Do I really look like a bad person? I'm so angry." When they walked into a hotel, they encountered a problem. The three of them didn't have passports, so they couldn't check in. Chu Feng wanted to communicate with them in broken English, but the Black Yak stepped in and spoke fluent Greek. His tongue didn't even have knots, it was very smooth. Chu Feng was tongue-tied. How could this cow even know Greek? He asked Yellow Cattle in a low voice what was going on. He made a short-term life plan for himself, so he learned a few languages, Yellow Cattle replied. What kind of short-term life plan requires Greek? Chu Feng didn't understand. Yellow Cattle said, "In the West there are Mount Olympus in Greece, and the Vatican's Garden of Sacred Herbs." He wanted to explore all of them, so he learned these languages a while ago. In addition, he also wanted to learn Egyptian. Of course, he also wanted to visit the legendary holy city of Jerusalem and learn the language there. Chu Feng was dumbfounded. He was completely speechless. This was indeed a cow with aspirations and ideals. However, if the Black Yak wanted to explore those places, it definitely wouldn't be a good thing. The lobby of this hotel was very grand and magnificent. The crystal chandelier flickered with dreamy radiance, and the floor was paved with sumo stones, sparkling and translucent. Chu Feng and Yellow Cattle sat on the sofa, watching the Black Yak communicate with the manager in authentic Greek. In the end, after the Black Yak's saliva flew everywhere, the manager actually agreed to let them get a room even though they didn't have passports. Moreover, he personally escorted them to the presidential suite on the top floor. Chu Feng was really impressed. This cow was too good at tricking people. How could he succeed in this? He couldn't help but ask the Black Yak what was going on. Tricking my guess. That manager himself is an anomaly. He mingled with the humans. I went over and told him that I'm a beast king and asked him to quickly arrange a room for us. Otherwise, I'll kill him. Of course, I also revealed a wisp of Beast King's aura at the right time. Isn't your style too rough and unrestrained? However, they did indeed enjoy top-notch hospitality that night. Other than the 2 oxen almost going crazy during the meal, everything was fine. That was because the main dish that was delivered to their room was steak. In the end, the 2 oxen went to the dining room by themselves. Chu Feng didn't stop them, but the 2 oxen's expressions became even more gloomy because they saw that almost everyone was eating steak. They had no choice but to return to their room and call for someone to deliver the food. These people are so stupid and stubborn. There are so many delicacies out there, yet they insist on eating only one dish. Foolish humans. The Black Yak vented his dissatisfaction. There was no way they could enjoy this meal. Chu Feng put down his knife and fork, grabbed the bottle of top-notch red wine, and ran to the dining room. He was ready to gorge himself on steak. The shape-shifting manager was extremely busy. He served the 2 oxen all kinds of dishes, such as lobster, foie gras, and so on. He didn't even dare to mention anything related to oxen. Chu Feng was satisfied. He returned from the dining room very late. His mouth was filled with the taste of beef, but he found that the 2 oxen were still awake. They were staring at him with green eyes. He immediately expressed his stance to prevent the oxen from settling accounts with him. Tomorrow, the treasures on Mount Olympus will belong to you. I only want to burn down the Qilin King's lair. The 2 oxen stared at him without saying anything and went to sleep. In the morning, the beast race manager sent the 3 of them downstairs as if they were the plague. He couldn't wait for them to leave as soon as possible. Don't go yet. Help us rent a plane. The Black Yak beckoned. After hearing these words, the beast race manager almost burst into tears. Rent a plane? What were these 3 trying to do? Don't be afraid. Just rent a helicopter. We're here for sightseeing, not to hijack a plane, the Black Yak said. Fine. The manager went to make the arrangements with a long face. Soon after, the Black Yak began to read the newspaper. Chu Feng and the Yellow Cattle didn't understand Greek. They felt bored and began to discuss how to make their move on Mount Olympus. One had to know that Mount Olympus was the most famous divine mountain in Europe. According to legends, the peak of Mount Olympus was the dwelling place of all living beings. The Qilin King had actually established his lair there, and it was at the foot of the mountain. This was enough to prove that there was something strange about Mount Olympus. A powerful beast king could only live at the foot of the mountain. Was it because he couldn't climb up, or was he simply not qualified? Suddenly, the Black Yak, who was reading the newspaper, said, "This Qilin King is very powerful. He slaughtered a beast king at the Vatican like a tyrant. He crushed that brown bear king as easily as breaking dry weed." This was the latest report. The Qilin King had gone on a killing spree at the Vatican, killing the brown bear king and injuring another beast king. His ferocity was monstrous. Oh, some people are talking about you again. They say that if the Qilin King kills another beast king, he'll have killed 2 in a row just like you. However, the Qilin King still looks down on you, haha. The Black Yak was rejoicing in Yu Yang's misfortune. This was because the Qilin king's reply was arrogant, conceited, and full of disdain. He only said, "He's not qualified to be mentioned in the same breath as me." "See you at the Vatican," Chu Feng said. Of course, he was going to raid the Qilin king's lair first. Finally, a helicopter was rented. The three of them boarded the helicopter and headed north toward Mount Olympus. Along the way, the pilot's legs were trembling. He was extremely afraid because he could tell that these three creatures were not ordinary. It seemed they were going to wreak havoc in the lair of a beast king. "Don't be afraid. Just drop us there. It has nothing to do with you," Chu Feng comforted him. After arriving at the destination, the three got off the helicopter. However, the pilot immediately ran away without waiting for them. Chu Feng and the others didn't mind. They directly entered the mountain and searched for the Qilin king's lair. There were many beast race experts here. They caught one and had it lead the way. "This is Mount Olympus?" Yellow Cattle was astonished. This mountain range was very vast. Many of its peaks pierced through the clouds and were shrouded in mist. "What's at the peak?" Chu Feng asked. The guide was a lynx that could speak human language. It was extremely afraid and trembled as it told them that no one could reach the peak. There was lightning and a dense fog that even beast kings couldn't charge up. "That's odd. Don't tell me there really are Zeus, Athena, and Apollo here," the Black Yak muttered. "Who cares? Let's destroy the Qilin king's lair first. I've raided birds' nests, but I've never raided a beast king's lair." Chu Feng's killing intent soared. The Qilin king had been looking down on him time and time again. Now that he had killed his way into Europe, he naturally had to give him a pleasant surprise. Before long, they arrived at the base of a majestic mountain. The place was suffused with auspicious qi and dense life essence. "That's the place." The lynx didn't dare to go any further. It was almost scared to death. That was the lair of a beast king. It was incomparably terrifying. Even the European army didn't dare to come and destroy it. Just what were the origins of these three ancestors? They actually came here to destroy their lair. "Look at you." The Black Yak disdainfully waved his hand, gesturing for the lynx to wait outside. Chu Feng and the others felt waves of scorching heat as they stepped into the area. Apart from the auspicious qi, there were also flames in the depths of the area. Chapter 157. The mountainous terrain was vast with sparse ancient trees. The ground was dry and hard, flickering with fire and auspicious qi. This was especially true of the ancient cave, where life essence and scarlet flames blended together and erupted outwards. No wonder this fellow is called the fire god. The place he lives in is quite extraordinary. Yellow Ox held his hands behind his back and spoke in a childish voice. His large eyes rolled around as he sized up the area. Roar! A beastly roar was heard as a gigantic head emerged from the cave. Its eyes were cold and its body was covered in scarlet scales. There was even a horn on its head. It slowly crawled out. "Foolish humans, you dare to invade the Qilin king's territory. Do you want to be massacred and your entire race exterminated?" This gigantic beast opened its mouth, and its voice shook the entire mountain forest. Many leaves rustled and fell. This was a huge beast at least 50 meters long. A quasi-beast king? The Black Yak looked on with interest. Chu Feng was also sizing it up. This was obviously the strange beast guarding the cave. It was not easy to reach the quasi-beast king realm. It looked like a crocodile or a lizard. When it opened its mouth, its white, eerie teeth could be seen. Roar! It let out a loud roar, causing the earth to shake and the mountains to shake. A red liquid shot out from its mouth, and swept over with a rumble. It was scarlet flames, blazing fiercely. The aura of a quasi-beast king erupted, causing many beasts in the mountain ridge to tremble in fear. They all knew that the Qilin king's assistant was fierce and tyrannical. Now, he was going to start a massacre. The Black Yak glared at him. He was dressed in a suit and wearing a pair of large sunglasses. With a cigar in his mouth, he calmly walked forward and said, "A reptile dares to roar at me? You must be tired of living. Judging from your baleful aura, it's obvious you've killed many creatures. Today, I'll send you off from the afterlife." Flames surged and covered an area of dozens of meters. The ground was melted, but it could do nothing to the black yak. He had arrived with the purple copper blade on his back. "You!" The giant beast was shocked. It was a quasi-beast king. A mouthful of flames could incinerate any human or beast. Even iron and stone would melt and evaporate into gas if they were hit. What kind of person was this? 3 of them came at once, completely ignoring its attack. Bang! The black yak lashed out with a kick. His shiny black leather shoes emitted a brilliant radiance and surged with mysterious energy. The kick sent the quasi-king rolling on the ground, screaming miserably. The sound of bones cracking came from its body, and blood spurted out of its mouth. "You are the king," he roared. His voice was like thunder, shaking the entire forest and echoing throughout the Olympus mountains. There were many beast races in the mountain range. When they heard this roar, all of them were shocked. Was the king of the humans here? Boom! The gigantic beast roared as flames overflowed into the sky. This quasi-king level beast was prepared to fight with its life on the line. It could feel the killing intent of the sunglasses-wearing man. He would not let it go. Bang, bang, bang. It kept attacking and advancing. Unfortunately, he was far inferior to the Beast King. His claws, teeth, and other parts were broken by the black yak's kick. The final kick sent him flying and crashing into the mountain wall. All the bones in his body were broken and tendons snapped. Blood flowed out of his 7 orifices and he died on the spot. Meow. In the distance, the lynx that was leading the way for the black yak and Chu Feng was so shocked that its fur stood on end after witnessing this scene with its own eyes. That was a true quasi-king level beast that ran amok in the mountains. Who dared to disobey it? It had threatened humans to massacre the entire city at every turn, but no army had come to exterminate it. But now it had been kicked to death by a human. Kings, 3 human kings. Oh my God, this cat is scared to death. The lynx trembled and meowed. In truth, many of the beast races in the Olympus Mountains were frightened out of their wit. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. The whole area was deathly silent. Many of them were the Jilin King's subordinate. They lived in this area and obeyed the Jilin King's orders. However, none of the beast races dared to act recklessly. At this time, a low roar came from within the ancient cave. Another scarlet beast crawled out, but it was obvious that it was not as powerful as the previous one. A giant lizard with red scales all over its body, Chu Feng muttered to himself. This race had all evolved from giant lizard. It was not hard to imagine that the Jilin King had undergone an unimaginable evolution. He had transformed from a lizard into a Western dragon. This was a qualitative transformation, a reversion of his bloodline. It was not hard to imagine how terrifying the Jilin King's strength was. There were a dozen or so scarlet-scaled lizard. Their bodies were wreathed in flames, and their fangs were as white as snow. They looked extremely malevolent, but none of them were as powerful as the quasi-king level beast. "If you don't want to die, leave immediately," the black yak said. In a flash, he emitted a king-level spiritual fluctuation, and a terrifying pressure surged forth. Roar! The group of fire lizards trembled and retreated continuously. Finally, they all ran away. The black yak and the others paid no attention to the retreating fire lizard. They stepped into the ancient cave and prepared to loot it. There were glowing stones everywhere. This made everyone speechless. It was just as the ancient books had said. Western dragons loved shiny objects. It would be fine if they were gems, but most of them were worthless. Some of them even contained radioactive substances, which was why they were glowing. What kind of lousy treasure is this? Don't tell me it's just a pile of rotten stones? Yellow Cattle was dissatisfied. The deeper they went, the higher the temperature in the cave became. It was a sea of fiery red, and in the end, magma could be seen. There were plants within the red liquid. They looked like lotus leaves floating on the magma, but they were definitely not lotus flowers. Their entire bodies were fiery red, and there were clusters of them. They were unafraid of the high temperature and emitted a fiery glow. Apart from this, there were also a few mutant trees. The shortest one was only 3 feet tall and had taken root on the stone walls. The tallest one was 3 or 4 meters tall and had taken root in the magma. They were all scarlet in color and were covered in scarlet mist and flames. This was the root of the Beast King's evolution. These fiery trees had once borne extraordinary fruit. What a pity, this pool of magma is different. It contained a great fortune, but the Jilin King managed to obtain it. Yellow Cattle was very regretful. Isn't it just a pool of magma? The Black Yak was suspicious. This pool once contained some dragon blood, which gave birth to these fiery trees. The Jilin King ate the fruit and bathed in the magma. Only then was he able to evolve and undergo a qualitative transformation. Dragon blood? No matter what kind of dragon it was definitely extraordinary. It was a pity that the Jilin King had beaten them to it. They continued to plunder, and in the end they almost cursed out loud. This Western Dragon's collection was simply too strange. He only liked glowing objects, and there was even a pile of mirrors. Gems, antiques. Finally, they found something valuable in a certain place. There was a very small bag, and after opening it, they found that it was filled with gems of all different colors. They were extremely resplendent and dazzling. At the same time, there were also some antiques on the ground, including spears, shields, and ancient swords. No one knew where the Jilin King had snatched them from. I think we should call a few trucks. There are too many random things here, and there's no way we can move them away. We might as well find a daring auction house and let them sort them out, Chu Feng said. The Black Yak rolled his eyes. You're too ruthless. Aren't you afraid that the Jilin King will go crazy after humiliating him like this? Which auction house would dare to come? In truth, the outside world had already heard the news and was in chaos. After the pilot escaped, he immediately leaked the news. He swore that he had sent 3 humans to Mount Olympus to destroy the Jilin King's lair. This kind of news was undoubtedly sensational. Many powers and organizations immediately acted upon hearing the news. They immediately sent people to Mount Olympus to stand guard outside the mountain and obtain the most accurate information. This dragon is too poor. He collects all kinds of trash, but he doesn't have any good stuff. Where are the legendary treasures? The Black Yak was furious. Gems, antiques, these are all very valuable. If we auction them in the human world, we'll be able to become rich immediately, Chu Feng said. Oh, this shield is not bad. Take it. Yellow Cattle found an ancient shield. It still had some silver luster, but it was very old. Parts of it had been eroded by the passage of time. What's the use of breaking it with a single punch? The Black Yak was dissatisfied. Try it, Yellow Cattle said. Clang! The whole ancient cave shook violently with a loud noise. The Black Yak's punch was unable to penetrate the shield. This is a good item. If you ask the Weaponry Refinement Sacred Tree to refine it, you'll need to open 13 flowers to refine it, Yellow Cattle said. This shield was mixed with silver essence and was very extraordinary. Chu Feng was shocked. This item was not ordinary at all. One had to know that even his scarlet flying knife only needed 15 flowers. Materials that required the refinement sacred tree to bloom 10 flowers were considered treasures. They were extremely rare on Earth. Materials that required 13 or 15 flowers were even more extraordinary. Haha! I didn't come in vain. The Black Yak laughed wildly. Yellow Cattle nodded and said, This shield is probably a legend in the West. It's a good item. It's just that this dragon doesn't know how to appreciate it. I don't know where he got it from, but he kept it as an antique. Finally, everyone found a piece of animal skin and made a big bag. They packed all the antiques in the cave and prepared to take them away. Apart from that, the glowing items were useless to them. This dragon is too poor. I was full of expectations. How disappointing! Yellow Cattle murmured. In his previous world, there were records of the ancient divine dragons. They were all extremely wealthy and had lived for a long time. They had collected countless treasures. The Jilin king had just evolved into a western dragon and naturally did not have such wealth. I think there might be something underground. Yellow Cattle was suspicious. Before leaving, he stared at the magma pool and the fiery plant. He came from another world and understood many ancient stories and secret. Looking at the spiritual energy of these fiery plants, he felt that there might be more to it than meets the eye. Boom! In the end, the three of them began to divert the flow, digging a trench and moving the magma away. A fiery red stone. The black yak cried out. The stone was surrounded by flames and emitting scarlet light. It was obviously extraordinary. Swoosh! Yellow Cattle fished it out. After a long time, the stone was still boiling hot. However, the scarlet light was restrained. Yellow Cattle smacked it with all his might. With a crack, the human head-sized stone shattered, revealing a fist-sized piece of scarlet metal surrounded by flames. "Haha, we've struck it rich!" Yellow Cattle was beaming with joy. He was now in the form of a little boy and looked quite radiant. "What is this?" Chu Feng asked. "Fiery gold," Yellow Cattle told him. According to the ancient records, this was a rare treasure in the world he came from. He didn't mention its rank, but it was definitely extraordinary. This dragon is really guarding the treasure without knowing it. If the experts knew about the fiery gold in this stone, they would definitely fight to the death for it. Let's go. It can be considered a rewarding trip. In the end, they were finally satisfied. After all, Yellow Cattle had obtained an extraordinary treasure. The black yak had also obtained a shield that might be related to the legends. When he left, Chu Feng had directed the lava to flow in all directions and burn down the entire cave. In the distance, Mountain Cat was excited to see them walk out. These three were truly godly people. They dared to rob the Jilin king's lair. They were truly extraordinary. "Sirs, there are some humans outside. They are watching from afar and don't dare to enter the mountain," Mountain Cat reported. "Oh, let's go and take a look," Chu Feng said. These people came from various major organizations. After the pilot leaked the secret, people from all over the world rushed to the scene. Among them were many reporters. They didn't dare to enter the mountain, but they dared to wait outside. They wanted to be the first to discover some shocking news. "Oh my God, there are really 3 humans. Look, each of them is carrying a big bag. Could it be that they really emptied the Jilin king's lair?" Someone cried out in surprise. However, no one dared to enter Mount Olympus. They could only watch with their binoculars. Chu Feng and the others halted their steps. They all frowned because there were simply too many people over there. After a while, a reporter finally moved. She was extremely daring. She had thrown caution to the wind in order to obtain first-hand news. She walked into the mountain with trembling hands. This was a female reporter with long brown hair. She could be considered pretty. She had brought all kinds of recording equipment with her. Her face was pale as she approached. "Hello, I'm Callie. I can." Callie was on the verge of tears at this point. Her whole body was trembling as she felt the pressure of a beast king. "That's enough, Black Boss. Don't scare them," Chu Feng said. Only then did the black yak retract his beast king's pressure. "Little brother, you're so cute and beautiful. I've never seen a child more beautiful than you," the female reporter said. The black yak laughed mischievously. He could understand Greek and was translating for Chu Feng. The female reporter was really afraid of the black yak. He didn't look like a good person at first glance. He was more like a gangster leader. Therefore, she tried her best to get close to the harmless yellow cattle. "Excuse me, are you really Beast Kings? What did you do just now?" the female reporter asked cautiously. She was afraid of the black yak. The black yak acted as her translator, explaining to Yellow Cattle what she meant. "We went to rob a Beast King's nest," Yellow Cattle replied in Eastern language. Her beautiful and delicate face was filled with innocence. Ah! At this time, the female reporter had recorded everything. After hearing the black yak's translation, she was so shocked that she almost fell to the ground. Even this child was a Beast King? Thump! Yellow Ox gently blew out a breath of air, and a boulder nearby exploded with a loud bang. The female reporter felt her whole body go limp. She tried her best not to fall to the ground. Then, her voice completely trembled, and she stammered. She only asked a few questions carefully, not daring to speak too much. "Excuse me, is the Beast King's nest very big? Are there many treasures inside?" the female reporter asked softly. Actually, she wanted to ask more important questions. However, she was too nervous and her questions were not up to standard. "He's a pauper with nothing on him. We only managed to bring out these 3 packages." "Jilin King, you're really poor," Yellow Cattle said to the camera with dissatisfaction. Later on, Chu Feng had a premonition that this interview would cause a huge storm. He reckoned the Jilin King would be so angry that he would stomp his feet and go crazy. Cough! Chu Feng coughed dryly to remind Yellow Cattle to give the Jilin King an even stronger warning. Yellow Cattle, with her head full of golden hair, looked beautiful and innocent. She suddenly shouted, "Jilin King, stop wasting time in the Vatican. Your mother is calling you home for dinner." It was the middle of the month. It was time to collect the monthly tickets for Yellow Cattle. Chapter 158. The brown-haired female reporter wore a suspicious expression. She couldn't understand what Yellow Cattle was saying because the black yak did not translate for her this time. Just like that, she left. This was because she did not have the courage to continue asking questions in the face of a king-level entity. Being able to come this far was already an extraordinary feat when the female reporter walked out of the mountainous region, her face pale and trembling. A large group of people surrounded her. There were even armed soldiers protecting her to prevent any accident. "Callie, are you alright? Oh God, you're really brave. I admire you so much." Without a doubt, this female reporter became the center of attention. She was surrounded by many people and finally entered a bulletproof car. Perhaps she would bring back some shocking news. The people from the major organizations and reporters were all envious and jealous. They all knew that Callie must have some incredible news in her hand. "Should we go in too?" someone whispered, wanting to imitate Callie and enter Mount Olympus. But no one paid attention to him. It was too dangerous and full of beasts. A single mistake could consign them to eternal damnation. At the same time, king-level entities were not that easy to approach. The first person might have piqued their interest, but the second person might annoy them. In particular, people speculated that the 3 people might not be humans, but beast kings in human form. After Callie was taken away, the military was the first to receive the news. They were all indescribably shocked. How could such a young child be a king-level entity? Some of the generals were scared stiff. The impact of this matter was too great. At the same time, they guessed that the child might not be human. This didn't make sense. Not long after, the report came out. The government and the military did not suppress it and revealed the truth of the interview. Boom! The entire Western world was shaken. The Jilin King's lair had been raided. The impact of this matter was simply earth-shattering. One had to know that the Jilin King was no ordinary beast king. He was extremely tyrannical, otherwise he wouldn't be known as the fire god. In the eyes of some humans, this beast king was practically a god. Although few had seen its true form, people had already deduced that it was a dragon. Just like the black dragon, it had undergone a super-evolution and reverted to its ancestry. Western dragons only appeared in legends. However, the Qilin king had undergone a qualitative transformation. Its physical body was terrifying, and it had turned into a red dragon. Who would dare approach its lair? Even the government didn't dare to clear it out. But now, a porcelain doll was shouting and looting the lair as if it were a bird's nest. This shocked everyone. Could this be fake news? Some people were doubtful because it was unbelievable. How could a mere child dare to loot the Qilin king's lair? Many people knew that the Jilin king's cave dwelling was guarded by a quasi-king. Even the army would not fare well if they went there. It's true, it can't be false. Some of the mutants on Mount Olympus have confirmed it. The Jilin king's lair was completely emptied out and burned down. These people were the most of the Qilin. The Qilin king everyone killed. The Western world was speechless. Everyone felt as if great waves were crashing over. How shocking was this? Many people, and they could not, the young of cattle. Not. The people in, but one thing. QT. The cattle from tutu to say. Tutu. Of. Many people were attracted to him. They felt that this 4 or 5-year-old child was simply too lovable. Everyone couldn't help but want to pinch him. Very soon, the second part of the report was published. Only now did people realize that the child was speaking in an Eastern language. Fortunately, there was a translation. He's a pauper. Yellow Cattle's weak voice echoed the 3 large bags in front of him. They were all open, and inside were gems and antiques. This proved that he had successfully looted the Beast King's lair. Qilin King, you're really poor. Yellow Cattle's childish voice carried a hint of dissatisfaction. These words caused a huge commotion. Ha ha! Many people laughed. A majestic Beast King was being looked down upon by a child, saying that his lair was too barren and empty. This kind of disdain was too fatal. After looting the Qilin King, he was still complaining. This made people speechless. Roar. Even though he was in the Vatican, the Qilin King was the first to receive the news. He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. His lair had been destroyed. This was a great humiliation, especially since it was a child who was being picky, complaining that his treasures were of inferior quality and that he was too poor. All the creatures in the Vatican heard the Qilin King's angry roar. It shook the heavens and shook the earth. The Beast King was enraged and let out a dragon's roar. Some of the king-level entities were secretly pondering. Just what was this child's background? He dared to be so rebellious. His audacity was beyond the heavens. The ordinary people smiled, feeling that this child was too cute. The experts felt their hair stand on end. They felt that this golden-haired child was extremely terrifying. Qilin King, your mother is calling you home for dinner. When this part of Yellow Cattle's speech was released, the entire land was silent, but soon after, it was filled with clamor and chaos. Some people were laughing, but others were afraid. This was akin to provoking a Beast King. Something big would happen in the future. Just what was this child's background? This was what everyone wanted to know. Just who was he? Many people felt their hair stand on end. To be so unbridled, he must have a great background. In the Western world, many people were terrified. No one laughed because of these words. Most people were worried that the Qilin King's anger would erupt like a volcano. Very few people in the whole of Europe dared to continue this provocation. However, the East was different. It caused great waves. At first, people didn't know what was happening in the West. After all, there was a time difference and a language barrier. But before long, this series of reports spread to the East. It was impossible for an excessively beautiful little boy to not cause a sensation in the land of the 9 prefectures. Oh my God, is this our Eastern child? How come he has long golden hair? Did he go and empty out the Qilin King's lair? This caused a huge commotion. Many people were discussing this matter, and even the major powers were alarmed. Is this revenge for immortal Chu? Some people were suspicious because the Qilin king had often mocked Chu Feng and looked down on his accomplishments in the West. Now, a child was ridiculing the Qilin king. This made many people feel strange. Definitely, as an Easterner, he must be fighting for immortal Chu. Following this, a huge wave swept through the East. That was because a certain phrase had become a hot topic. It was constantly on everyone's lips, and some people were even playing games. Qilin king, your mom is calling you home for dinner. Within a short period, this phrase was being spread all over the internet. People were taking revenge on the Qilin king for his arrogance and conceit. In Europe, everyone was speechless. The majestic Qilin king was actually being looked down upon in the East. Was no one afraid of him? At the same time, the people of the Western world were even more worried. The enraged Qilin king would become extremely dangerous. At that time, he might even stir up a storm of blood. At the Vatican, the Qilin king opened his mouth. His cold words spread throughout the West and were recorded by people. I don't care who you are or what your background is. If you dare to step into my cave residence, I will kill you without mercy. Pray that you can still live. As long as you are still standing on this land, I will definitely find you and tear you to shreds. In addition, there were people who took pictures of his terrifying figure. His entire body was scarlet red, and his body was enormous. He was flapping his giant wings as he soared through the sky. The scene was simply too terrifying. In the Western world, people felt a chill run through their bodies. This was exactly the same as the legendary Red Dragon. Not long after, a shocking picture was circulated. People finally understood the background of that golden-haired boy. The brown-haired reporter, Kelly, did not dare to take a picture of Chu Feng and the Black Yak. This was especially true because the latter was probably a gangster leader among the Beast Kings. He was extremely ferocious and didn't seem like a good person. Kelly did not dare to aim the camera at the Black Yak and only took a picture of the golden-haired boy. However, although the people from other organizations were far away, they managed to secretly take a picture using top-grade equipment. It wasn't very clear, but it was enough to identify the person. At first, they were still suspicious and didn't dare to post it. But now, with the development of the situation, everything was confirmed and made public. Oh my God, look! Who's behind the little boy? Someone cried out in surprise. His companion glanced at him but didn't look carefully. He's wearing a suit and leather shoes. His hair is combed back and he's wearing a pair of sunglasses. He's smoking a cigar as thick as a carrot. One look and you can tell he's a gangster. No, look at the other person. In fact, those who were careless quickly discovered the abnormality. Their voices were trembling as they said, "Oh my God, is it that person? He looks like the Eastern Demon King Chu?" Very soon, the Black Yak was forgotten. Everyone's gaze was focused on the smiling young man gazing at the distant mountains. Demon King Chu. At this moment, the whole Western world was shaken. All the major powers were shocked and immediately sent experts to verify the authenticity of the picture. That was because the impact of this matter was too great. What was the background of this golden-haired boy? This had always been the focus of everyone's speculation. Now that it was proven that Demon King Chu was behind him, everything could be explained. So it turned out that Demon King Chu was the big boss behind the scenes. Very soon, the most professional experts confirmed that the picture was real and not fake. The Western world was in an uproar. The little boy's identity was previously the focus of everyone's attention. Now, everything had come to light. With Demon King Chu standing behind him, it was no wonder he dared to raid the Beast King's lair. Oh my God, Chu Feng has really come to the Western world. Is he here to help us kill the Beast King? Oh God, I'm not dreaming, right? Chu Feng has come. Everything is his handiwork. The moment he set foot on our land, he immediately ransacked the Qilin King's lair. Momentarily, the Western world was shaken. It was as if a hurricane had engulfed the whole of Europe. Demon King Chu had arrived and made a powerful entrance. Previously, the Qilin king had looked down on him with incomparable contempt. He felt that Chu Feng wasn't qualified to be mentioned in the same breath as him. He even sneered and said that Chu Feng wouldn't dare set foot in the West for the rest of his life. Otherwise, he would fall and teach him how to behave. At that time, Demon King Chu didn't say anything. Was it because he felt that it was beneath him to bicker? Many people suspected that this wasn't his style. In the end, Demon King Chu had arrived today without saying a word. Instead, he had cleanly done such a big thing. At the Vatican, the Qilin king's anger soared to the heavens. He was roaring. Today's matter had infuriated him beyond belief. This was a naked humiliation that almost caused him to cough up blood and tremble with anger. Chu Feng, Demon King Chu, you actually dared to come to Europe and set foot in the West. Don't even think of returning to the East alive. I'll definitely kill you. The Qilin king roared and revealed his true form. His entire body was wreathed in flames and scarlet radiance. He soared through the skies outside the Vatican, shaking the entire land. The news naturally spread to the east. When people saw the picture with Chu Feng in the background, they erupted into an uproar. Damn it, it really is Immortal Chu. Heavens, I knew he wouldn't let that giant lizard run its mouth, and would definitely descend to the west to deal with it. Who would have thought he'd ransacked the Qilin king's lair so quickly? Haha, as expected of Demon King Chu, this is his style. It's actually Chu Feng. He actually ran to the west. As expected, he's showing his true colors as a demon king. This is the kind of powerful aura he should have. That giant lizard, what are you shouting about? Look, even Immortal Chu isn't interested in talking to you. He's going to destroy your lair and then kill you. This is the style of a transcendent being. The East was about to explode. Chu Feng had killed his way to the West and done such a big thing without anyone noticing. This caused a huge commotion. Everyone was discussing this matter with incomparable excitement. Many people were looking forward to Chu Feng's third or even fourth kill. Not to mention the humans, even the beast races of the East were shocked. That Demon King Chu had actually run to the West? This was too shocking. Was he going to fight across regions? Xiong Kun, Hu Xing, Lu Qing, and the others were wiping off their cold sweat. They were secretly relieved that they didn't provoke this ancestor back then. He was even more valiant than they had imagined. Even some of the beast kings were dumbfounded. Many of the beast race experts felt an indescribable sense of relief, as if a great burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Many of the beast race experts were praying that Demon King Chu might as well not return and go wreak havoc in the West. Not to mention the others, even those who were familiar with him almost dropped their jaws when they heard the news. Boss, aren't you too mighty? Du Huijin, Ouyang Qing, Yi Qingru, and the others were all dumbfounded. Jiang Luoshan was dumbfounded. Her bright red lips were agape when she heard this news, unable to close them for a long time. This was too unexpected. Chu Feng, you originally didn't have the qualifications to set foot in the Vatican. But now I'm giving you a pass. Do you dare come and fight me? The Qilin king roared, emitting a torrential killing intent. His declaration of challenge naturally spread everywhere. Some people even revealed his terrifying draconic form, shocking the world. He was a dragon and not an ordinary beast king. Chu Feng was on Mount Olympus, but he was also paying attention to the outside world. He replied on his communicator and wrote a few words on his social media platform. Wash your neck and wait for me to slay the dragon. That was his simple reply. Be it the East or the West, it was as if a great earthquake had happened. Everyone knew that Demon King Chu was going to the Vatican to fight the Qilin king. Chapter 159. Mount Olympus was majestic and majestic. Chu Feng, the Black Yak, and the yellow cattle had yet to leave because they were staring at the cloudy region halfway up the mountain. Their eyes were burning with passion as they wanted to ascend. This mountain range was known as the center of Europe in ancient times. There were countless myths and legends, and countless people worshipped it. The three circled around the mountain range and learned enough information from the beast race. They were so tempted that they didn't even want to go to the Vatican. To this day, not a single beast king had ascended the main peak of Mount Olympus. Just how much divine pollen and fruits would there be? So much so that few people could even ascend halfway up the mountain. The leopard cat leading the way was terrified. Its silky fur stood on end as it trembled and said, "Sirs, please forgive my cowardice. The peak is the holy land of the gods, I dare not approach it." According to the leopard, there had been beast kings who had tried to ascend the mountain, but they either died or went missing. The mountain was once stained with the blood of a beast king, and was now stained with scarlet. It was a ghastly sight and intimidated those who came after it. Few beast races dared to set foot in the forbidden area. At the same time, even the powerful Qilin king lived at the foot of the mountain. He didn't go up the mountain, and only stayed here to wait for opportunities. "All right, you can go." Chu Feng waved his hand and didn't make things difficult for the leopard. Meow. The leopard cat turned and ran away, disappearing into the forest. Clang. The black yak unsheathed the purple sword on his back and held it in his hand. Chu Feng also grasped his dagger and prepared to ascend the mountain. The three of them moved with extreme speed. Even Yellow Ox, who had transformed into a child, was as agile as a monkey. His long golden hair danced in the wind as he rushed up the mountainous terrain. He stepped on huge rocks and ancient trees as he neared the mountainside. The main peak was shrouded in mist all year round. Above the mountainside was a vast sea of clouds. According to ancient records, the peak of the main peak was the dwelling place of the gods. I refuse to believe that there are existences like the sun god or the war god up there. Even if there were such beings, they must have long since decayed, the black yak said. He flaunted himself as an atheist who only believed in evolution. The main peak was extremely vast. The mountain was brown in color, and the higher it went, the more sparse the trees became. However, they were all ancient trees, verdant and glistening. Astonishing life essence energy curled about them. Chu Feng's heart palpitated as he gripped the black dagger in his hand. This place gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. One had to know that they were only halfway up the mountain and had just entered the misty area. "This place is very dangerous," Yellow Cattle reminded, because there was a lot of blood on the ground. Even though it had dried up, it still made one's heart jump. This was the blood of a beast king. More than one beast king had come to Mount Olympus, and all of them wanted to enter the dwelling place of the gods. There were corpses, scales, and feathers stained with blood, indicating that they were all dead. Ka! Suddenly, the sound of thunder came from the top of the mountain, accompanied by lightning. The scene was terrifying. It was too sudden. One had to know that the skies were clear and boundless in other areas. Only this mountainous region was shrouded in clouds and mist, inexplicably producing thunder. "I reckon that it will be very difficult to climb to the top of the main peak." Chu Feng's expression was solemn. His divine instinct warned him that staying here made his hair stand on end. Even if the three of them joined forces, it might still be dangerous. In fact, the peak of Mount Olympus was even more dangerous than they had imagined. In the next moment, a thick bolt of lightning fell, carrying with it the power of destruction. This place weakened one's divine instinct and reduced one's ability to avoid danger. The three of them moved ahead of time and crossed hundreds of meters. Boom! The area behind them exploded. Lightning filled the middle of the mountain, and the blazing blue light was terrifying. The mountainous region was torn apart, and rubble flew into the sky. "That old bastard Zeus is still alive?" The black yak was scared. It was said that Zeus, the ruler of Mount Olympus, used lightning as his weapon. Now that they were being bombarded by lightning while climbing the mountain, it was hard not to think about it. Chu Feng took out an antique spear from the huge bag he was carrying on his back. With a swoosh, he threw it out and stuck it into the ground. Gotcha! Sure enough, when another bolt of lightning fell, it was drawn away by the spear. Electric currents splashed and sparks flew in all directions. Oh, not good! Retreat! The Black Yak suddenly shouted. The peak of the mountain was filled with an even more dangerous aura, which made them feel very uneasy. Amidst the lightning, something rushed down from the mysterious main peak. Boom! The three of them had just jumped out when the ground was smashed to pieces. It could be said that the mountain had collapsed and the earth had cracked. Lightning filled the air and the place was blazing. The mountain rocks were melted, and the ancient trees were turned into ashes. A powerful electric current burst forth, incomparably blazing and terrifying. Is that a whip? Even Yellow Cattle felt his scalp go numb. Was there really a creature on the mountain? This whip could kill a beast king, and it was extremely destructive. Clang! Chu Feng took action. He shot out the scarlet flying knife and turned it into a shocking rainbow, slashing towards the source of the whip. Clang! Sparks flew in all directions, and an ear-piercing metallic sound came from that area. The tip of the whip was cut off, but it did not affect it much. Whoosh! The wind whistled as the black whip lashed out with powerful lightning. The creature on the mountain peak seemed to be enraged and attacked with lightning. Let's go! The Black Yak shouted. He didn't want to continue fighting because he had a premonition that this creature was too terrifying. It was not something they could contend against. The three of them were as fast as lightning, and they continuously changed their direction to evade the lightning god's whip. Behind them, the mountainous ground split open, and a 10-meter-tall boulder was pierced through in an instant. The jet-black whip was unstoppable as it came riding on lightning. This jet-black whip is too long. It stretches from the top of the mountain to the bottom for at least 1,200 meters. It can actually whip it down so easily. The Black Yak was bewildered. At this time, they had already rushed down the mountain, evading dozens of attacks. One could see that the jet-black whip was accompanied by lightning. It was fairly terrifying, and it destroyed a cliff with a single strike. It was unstoppable. It's not a metal whip, it's the body of a creature, Yellow Cattle said. They stopped because they had already run to the foot of the mountain. The jet-black lightning whip did not pursue them and instead, gradually retreated. A vine! Chu Feng suddenly said. He saw that the jet-black whip in the distance had leaves on it. They were also black, and they were emitting a jet-black glow accompanied by lightning. Zeus is a vine king? The Black Yak was both shocked and angry. They didn't know what kind of creature Zeus evolved from, but the one riding lightning on this mountain was definitely a strange vine. The three were shocked. They discussed whether they should attack the mountain or not, but in the end they sighed. It would be too difficult. Even if the three of them joined forces, they probably wouldn't be able to break through. The vine was too powerful. It's probably at the same level as the Peacock King, having severed 6 shackles and becoming a peerless expert. Yellow Cattle said. Up until now, no creature with 7 severed shackles had appeared because it was too difficult to reach that level. Let's try again. It's just a vine. At worst, we can just set fire to the mountain. The Black Yak was unwilling to give up and revealed a valiant aura. Don't act rashly. A creature at this level is definitely not afraid of fire. Yellow Cattle shook his head. The three of them were unwilling to give up. This was Mount Olympus, the dwelling place of the god. It went without saying that after the world had recovered, there would definitely be divine trees blooming on the main peak. Swoosh! Finally, the three moved again. They climbed up stealthily from 3 different directions, hoping to sneak up. However, they were chased down once again halfway up the mountain. The vine flickered with black light struck down like lightning, threatening to destroy the heaven and earth. Thump! This time, the chase was even fiercer. 3 jet-black vines chased them all the way to the foot of the mountain and were still attacking. A small hill nearby was directly blasted apart. The 3 were in a sorry state. Their faces were covered in dust and their clothes were tattered. There were traces of being struck by lightning on their bodies. There was no way they could charge up. This vine was too terrifying. We 3 kings can't even deal with a single vine? If it was a beast king with 6 severed shackles, they wouldn't dare to kill it so easily. However, this was a plant that needed to take root in the soil. It couldn't leave the ground quickly, so this was an opportunity. So much so that they wanted to force this terrifying vine down the mountain and kill them. Then, one of them would quietly climb up the mountain to collect its pollen and mutant fruit. Boom! Suddenly, a ball of blazing light appeared on the main peak. It was so intense that it was like a rising sun. Then, it rapidly descended the mountain. Not good, a creature is chasing us down. The 3 hurriedly distanced themselves from the main peak and became vigilant. It was like a real sun, surging with golden light. The waterfall on the mountain evaporated on the spot and turned into white mist. No way, don't tell me this is the sun god Apollo. The black yak was speechless. Boom! At this time, the golden sun finally stopped hanging halfway up the mountain. As the golden radiance gradually receded, Chu Feng and the others saw its true form. A sunflower? Even Yellow Cattle's eyes were wide open, his face full of astonishment. No wonder it shone with dazzling golden light. This was a dazzling sunflower. Its entire body was flowing with the essence of extreme yang. It was extremely glaring. The so-called sunflower was actually a sunflower. This plant, from its roots to its leaves, was emitting a blazing light. Zeus is a vine that surges with lightning, while Apollo, the sun god, is a sunflower. Is there anything more ridiculous than this? Is this the leader of the gods in the ancient myths? The black yak looked quite shaken. Suddenly, the 3 of them tensed up and reacted immediately. They dashed in different directions and dodged in the blink of an eye. The sunflower was enormous and intimidating, especially the sunflower seeds. They looked like they were cast from gold, and were dazzling to the extreme. Each seed was a foot long, and at this moment, they suddenly shot out. Boom! When a dazzling golden sunflower seed crashed into the area, it caused a violent explosion. A radius of 100 meters was flattened, and then a big pit appeared. Swoosh, 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 halfway up the mountain, a foot-long golden seed emitted a dazzling brilliance, illuminating the whole heaven and earth. It whistled as it chased after the 3. Boom! Mount Olympus seemed to have been bombarded by hot weapons. The forest collapsed, the earth was torn apart, and some small hills were directly flattened. Is this a sunflower seed? It's a missile. The black yak was about to curse. His face was covered in dirt, and he was in a sorry state. He ran as fast as he could, and a small hill behind him exploded. The terrifying shockwave sent him flying and smashing him into the mountain wall in the distance. After a long while, the area finally calmed down. Chu Feng and Yellow Ox were fine. Only the black yak had been chased and bombarded. His clothes were ragged, and his swept-back hair had long since become disheveled. Even the strands of hair were stuck together. When they turned around, they saw that the mountain region was in a complete mess. The short mountain had been flattened, and the ground was split into pieces. This left them dumbstruck, and they couldn't say anything for a long time. This was just too strange. It was just a sunflower, but its power was too great, right? 1 or 2 sunflower seeds were nothing, but dozens of foot-long golden seeds erupted like missiles. This kind of power was too shocking. Use the diamond chakram to kill it. The black yak was dissatisfied. He was almost buried under a collapsed hill. It's gone, Chu Feng said. Polo, get down here! The black yak shouted from the foot of the hill. It's very likely that he's called Apollo, Yellow Cattle reminded. I don't care. Polo, your sister, get down here. You almost killed this grandpa. This isn't over. The black yak roared at the top of the hill. Stop shouting. Maybe he really does have a sister like Athena, Chufeng said. For a moment, the man and the two oxen could only stare at each other helplessly. Zeus was a king ting, and the sun god was a sunflower. There couldn't be other monsters, could there? Legend had it that there were 12 main gods up there. Even Yellow Cattle felt a headache coming on. Forget it, let's go. They probably aren't Zeus and the sun god, but with these two king-level entities guarding this place, there's no way we can fight our way up. According to their speculations, that sunflower should be a terrifying entity with 5 severed shackles. How many people could afford to provoke it with the addition of a peerless king ting? The 3 left resentfully. They felt that there was no need for them to come back to this legendary land of the gods for the time being. They changed out of their tattered clothes at a shop in a small town and freshened up. They were once again in high spirits, especially the black yak who had put a layer of shiny hair gel on his swept-back hair. Our destination is the Vatican. Let's go. They slowly made their way to the airport. Along the way, they were overtaken by dozens of luxury cars. Many people got off and approached cautiously. King Chu from the east, may I ask where you are going? We can send you off. A golden-haired middle-aged man spoke with a trembling voice. He was somewhat nervous. We're going to the Vatican. Help us prepare a plane. Chu Feng didn't regard himself as an outsider. He understood their intentions and couldn't wait for the 3 to leave as soon as possible. They had robbed the Qilin king's lair. This would definitely cause a huge storm. How could that beast king swallow this anger? A peerless battle was bound to break out. The Greek army was most afraid of such a thing happening. If 2 king-level entities were to fight, who knew how far the shockwaves would spread and what kind of terrifying consequences it would bring? Very well, we'll go arrange it immediately, the middle-aged man agreed happily. They were hoping that Chu Feng would come to Europe to kill the Beast Kings, but they didn't want him to cause a huge commotion within their own borders. It would be best if he went to the uninhabited regions to fight. Chapter 160. The plane's specifications were extremely high. It had the spaciousness of a large passenger plane with a bathroom and conference room, as well as the tyranny of a fighter plane with all kinds of missiles. The attendants in the cabin were all fluent in Chinese. Their Mandarin was even more fluent than most Easterners. King Chu, as per your request, I've brought the Jilin King's information, the golden-haired middle-aged man said. He was a military officer and had personally accompanied Chu Feng to the Vatican as if he were the plague. Chu Feng received a stack of documents from him. Inside were detailed records of the Jilin King's accomplishments, especially his current evolution level. He's already severed 4 shackles? Even the black yak was astonished. He stared at the top-secret documents on the table. This was beyond their expectations. One had to know that the black yak had only severed 3 shackles. The Jilin King has only severed 4 shackles recently. It'll be difficult for him to break through again in the near future. Chu Feng studied the documents seriously. No wonder the Jilin King is so conceited. Every time he mentions Chu Feng, he's always full of disdain. He's indeed terrifying, Yellow Cattle said solemnly. His large eyes were clear and his sharp nose was wrinkled like a doll. His small face was tense as he sat there tapping the table with his fingers. The Jilin King was definitely a ruthless character. He was not someone an ordinary beast king could compare to. Not long after, news of Chu Feng's departure from Greece to the Vatican was leaked to the outside world. The Western world was shaken by this news. Countless people felt their hearts beating faster. They were almost suffocating from the tension. A great storm was coming. People realized that Chu Feng was about to meet the Jilin King at the Vatican. There would definitely be a battle to the death. Suddenly, the whole world was watching. Be it the West or the East, everyone was waiting for the great battle to begin. In the past, it didn't take long to reach the Vatican from Greece. But now, with the appearance of a large number of folded spaces, it took an entire day and night. The large aircraft landed when it was still several hundred kilometers away from the Vatican. It didn't dare approach for fear of being torn apart by the bird kings. That place was now a blood-stained demonic land. Too many humans and beasts had died there, including several king-level existences. Chu Feng, the black yak, and the yellow cattle alighted from the aircraft and traveled hundreds of kilometers on foot toward their destination. This area was completely different from the past. Many human settlements were surrounded by dense primitive forests, and the folded spaces in this area were dense. In the past, this was a very prosperous area in Europe. The closer they got to the Vatican, the more primeval forests there were. It was like a whole new world. A few hundred miles was nothing to the three of them, and they soon arrived. The original Vatican was very small, not even 1 square kilometer. However, its status was extremely high. It was a religious holy land, the center of faith for 1/6 of the world's population. Although the Vatican was small, there were many churches. However, these modern buildings had all collapsed and turned into ruins. This place had completely changed. It had expanded from less than 1 square kilometer to who knew how big it was. One could not see the end of it. At the same time, in this area, around the ruins of the modern buildings, one after another, taller and older buildings appeared out of nowhere. This was very sudden and very strange. It was as if the Vatican had been connected to a mysterious small world. The ancient castles and majestic churches were connected together. No one knew when they were built, but they had a heavy sense of history and vicissitude. They had replaced the original churches. These incomparably ancient buildings accumulated the power of time and were suffused with holy splendor. Chu Feng, the black yak, and the yellow cattle could not believe their eyes. The current Vatican was completely different. They could not recognize it at all. It was as if they had arrived at the mythological era of countless years ago. The buildings here were grand and dignified. All the bricks and tiles were glowing with a dark golden luster, emitting a holy radiance. Pious prayers and hymns could be heard coming from the ancient buildings. From time to time, resplendent pillars of light would shoot up and pierce through the clouds. It was as if an ancient sacrificial ceremony had been reenacted. Chu Feng and the other two looked at each other in dismay. This was no longer the Vatican City of the past. It had been replaced and turned into an ancient city of the gods. It occupied a vast area, and its layout was related to ancient religions. It was built in the style of thousands of years ago. A majestic ancient city has risen from the ground to replace the original Vatican. Chu Feng sighed. Chu Feng, Yellow Cattle, and the others found a high vantage point and gazed at the ancient city. They saw a glowing area where life essence was gushing out like a sweet spring. The sacred medicinal garden. They nodded inwardly. The Vatican's sacred medicinal garden was located at the heart of the ancient city. There seemed to be a barrier protecting the pure land and the various ancient trees within. In order to approach the sacred medicinal garden, one had to enter this divine city first. Within the city, within a majestic ancient castle, a heroic and intimidating man was sitting on an ancient stone chair engraved with divine images. His eyes shot out beams of divine radiance as he blinked. He was the Jilin king. He had evolved from a salamander to a western dragon. This was a qualitative transformation and could be considered a breakthrough in the extreme realm. He had achieved a great leap in life. The Jilin king was injured. His flaming long hair was stained with blood, and there was a terrifying wound stretching from his shoulder to his abdomen. The wound was glowing with light, preventing it from healing. The Holy Sea's holy sword is indeed terrifying. It's actually so powerful. The Jilin king muttered to himself, his eyes blazing with divine light. Your Majesty, it seems that Demon King Chu has arrived. Someone entered the castle and reported cautiously. He came at the wrong time. I'm currently injured and the sacred medicinal garden will open at any moment, the Jilin king replied. His face was fair and translucent, and his long red hair hung loosely behind him. He was extremely handsome. There's no need for you to take action. Some beast kings will definitely try to teach Chu Feng a lesson in order to express their goodwill, a beast king within the castle replied. The ancient city was guarded by beast kings, and not just anyone could enter. Who knew how many beast kings had come to the Vatican City? Each of them occupied a castle or palace. The rules had long since been set. Ordinary people had no right to enter unless they were powerful enough. Chu Feng walked over and was about to step into the divine city. Stop right there, who are you? A black wolf in front of the city spoke. He was squatting there, his body several meters tall and revealing a mouthful of snow-white fangs. It was quite a frightening sight. He scolded in English. Although he wasn't a beast king, he was still able to use his connections to intimidate others. Chu Feng. Chu Feng stood in front of the city and announced his name. Although his English was quite poor, it wasn't a problem for him to communicate. What? Your demon King Chu? The black wolf was scared and stood up with a ting sound. He could no longer remain calm, and all the hairs on his body stood up. Apparently, he had been frightened and turned to run. Not long after, two people walked out from the ancient city. Behind them were many beast kings, but it was clear that these two were the leaders. They were both beast kings. Oh, King Chu from the east, you've finally arrived. I admire your courage and perseverance to travel thousands of kilometers to the west. Not bad. This was a fairly young man with a head of long golden hair. His skin was fair and his eyes were dark blue. He looked like a typical Westerner. However, Chu Feng knew that this was not the case. This was a beast race beast that was emitting a powerful aura. It was definitely a beast king. Dear Chu, this way please. I've already arranged a place for you to stay. No matter what kind of enmity you have with the Jilin king, we'll talk about it later. Let's settle down first, the golden-haired young man said with a smile. He made an inviting gesture and introduced himself as Andre. Beside Andre, there was another person standing shoulder to shoulder with him. That man had a cold and arrogant air about him. Every strand of his light golden hair was hard and sturdy. He nodded towards Chu Feng and the others. Apparently, he was also a beast king. This way please. Andre smiled warmly and brilliantly. Chu Feng expressed his gratitude and followed him into the city. They walked along the bluestone-paved streets, which seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of time. Majestic buildings from thousands of years ago could be seen along the way. Among them, many ancient castles and palaces were glowing and emitting divine energy. Finally, they stopped in front of an extremely tall church. This place was sprinkled with holy splendor and was filled with an auspicious aura that hadn't dissipated for thousands of years. Andre said with a smile, Dear Chu, welcome to the divine city. I believe this majestic palace is worthy of your status. Please rest here for now. We'll prepare a grand welcoming ceremony for you at night. At that time, some beast kings will appear. After that, he gave Chu Feng a hug and left with his men. How cordial! But after such a long time, I still don't know which beast king they are, the black yak mumbled. His eyes were sparkling as he stared at Andre and Homan's backs. After leaving that place, Andre's radiant smile vanished and revealed a mouthful of snow-white teeth. 3 idiots, you think you can establish a foothold in the divine city? There was a group of beast race experts following behind him and Homan. They all laughed loudly and praised him, saying that he had sent Demon King Chu to hell with just a few tricks. This so-called King Chu is only SOSO. He's about to be buried in the belly of the undead phoenix. How disappointing! Homan was also laughing coldly. His golden hair was stiff, accentuating his ruthlessness. When he mentioned the undead phoenix, these beast race experts all trembled in fear. That was because that was a bird king with 6 severed shackles, and was known as a peerless expert. At this stage, only a small number of experts with 6 severed shackles could look down on all the beast kings. Their combat strength was world-shaking. The undead phoenix liked to feast on experts. She had set down a rule that anyone who stepped into her territory would be hunted down. At this time, Andre's golden hair was hanging loosely behind him. His warm smile from before had completely disappeared and was replaced with a cold expression. Oh, at first I wanted to personally kill him. He's only a severed shackle, how dare he come to the divine city? I just didn't expect him to be so stupid. I was just playing with him, yet he fell for the trap so easily. How boring. He wore a mocking expression and didn't care about the lives of Chu Feng's group at all. He shook his head and ridiculed them to his heart's content. Indeed, it's not fun. It's better to just kill him directly. Homan also shook his head. He had always been proud of his strength. After severing his 3rd shackle, killing someone at Chu Feng's level would be a piece of cake. Behind them, the group of beast race experts echoed in agreement, mocking Chu Feng's group. They had only just arrived in the West, yet they had already lost their lives so easily. Could it be that the king-level entities of the East are all so weak? I feel that after we settle the matter at the Vatican, we can go and conquer the East. Andre laughed. Oh, that's not a bad idea. Homan nodded. At this time, 3 people walked out from the corner of the street. It was Chu Feng's group. You two are talking among yourselves. Are you having fun? Chu Feng's face wore a cold smile. Andre and Homan's smiles froze. Within a split second, they emitted a terrifying suppressive aura. They no longer concealed their murderous intent. At least you're not stupid. Since you didn't go in and throw your life away, we'll personally send you on your way. How dare a low-level king like you who has just severed his 1st shackle come to the West to behave so atrociously? Andre sneered. Although Chu Feng's expression was calm, there was a flame of anger in his heart. The golden-haired man had actually dared to play with them. Although he had long since seen through it, he could still feel the other party's sinister intentions and arrogant attitude. Didn't you two feel that the Eastern kings are weak? Today we'll kill them for you to see. Chu Feng said. The black yak and yellow cattle stood to one side, ready to act at any moment to prevent the 2 king-level entities from escaping. You're just low-level king-level entities. Come at me, Homan said. His face was cold and cruel, surging with killing intent. However, he was very cautious. He activated all the mysterious energy in his body and did not let his guard down. He was prepared to kill Chu Feng and do the Jilin king a favor. As for Andre, his golden hair danced in the wind. He was even more prepared to fight. He took the initiative and charged towards Chu Feng with a sinister smile on his face. I can't be bothered to waste my time with you two. Go on your way. Chu Feng shouted. He then threw out the diamond chakram that he had long since picked up. With a loud boom, it tore through the air at supersonic speed, emitting a thunderous boom. The diamond chakram was now tens of thousands of kilograms in weight. Moreover, it was thrown out at such a speed. It was simply too terrifying. Andre's body was directly broken into 2. Blood flowed from the wound as his upper body fell to the ground. He screamed, "Ah!" His voice was filled with pain and it shook the entire divine city. At the same time, the diamond chakram didn't slow down after piercing through his body. With a loud boom, it struck Homan, causing his chest to explode and blood to spurt out. Chapter 161. The bright diamond chakram spun as it flew out, causing the 2 arrogant beast kings to cough up blood and fall to the ground. The entire Vatican was alarmed by their mournful cries. One had to know that these were extraordinary beast kings with 3 severed shackles. Andre's body was split into 2 after being struck by the rapidly spinning diamond chakram. He rolled on the ground in unbearable pain, his golden hair stained with blood. The right side of Homan's chest had been split open. His sternum was fractured and his internal organs were injured. Half of his body was almost torn apart as he was flung out and smashed into the ground. The two experts had lost their combat strength. Those beasts that followed them were frightened out of their wits. Their legs were trembling, and they felt a chill run down their spines. Boundless fear arose from the depths of their hearts as they trembled in fear. What kind of power was this? The battle was over as soon as Chu Feng made his move. With an overwhelming advantage, the two beast kings were lying in pools of blood. Andre and Homan were almost divine and omnipotent. They could easily wipe out large swathes of beast race experts, but they ended up in such a miserable state against Demon King Chu. This was hard to believe. The black yak and yellow cattle were speechless. Chu Feng was too unkind. He had used a powerful killing weapon like the diamond chakram right off the bat. Everything was over before they even started fighting. The main reason was that Chu Feng had ended the battle quickly. This was the Vatican where many beast kings resided. There was no telling if someone would come out and target them. At the same time, the great enemy, the Qilin king, was also eyeing them like a tiger watching its prey. It would be troublesome if he were to suddenly appear and join the battle. Therefore, he had used his most powerful trump card right off the bat in order to end the battle quickly. The truth was that it was extremely effective. The divine instincts of the beast kings clashed here, making it difficult for them to evade in advance. Just how powerful was this diamond chakram? A simple calculation was able to roughly estimate its power. Although it was small in size, it weighed thousands of kilograms or even tens of thousands of kilograms after being infused with mysterious energy. Flying at supersonic speeds, that kind of terrifying momentum was enough to frighten anyone. Using a bullet as a reference, even though the speed was similar, the difference in quality was hundreds of thousands of times. The diamond chakram's power was multiplied by several times compared to a bullet. It was so terrifying that even beast kings would tremble in fear. Artillery shells, rockets, and armor-piercing bullets were nothing compared to it. Only the king-class creatures were strong enough to resist ordinary missiles. Otherwise, if it were any other creature, even if the diamond chakram only grazed them, it would still be torn to shreds. Ultimate trash? Chu Feng did not care at all. Even if it couldn't enlarge or shrink in the future, and couldn't form similar abilities to divine abilities, it didn't matter. At this stage, it was a great killing weapon. Regardless of whether or not it would have a form but no spirit in the future, it was now a treasure to Chu Feng. Moreover, the diamond chakram could be light or heavy, which was already extraordinary. Andre was rolling on the ground, screaming in pain. His body had been twisted into two by the supersonic rotation of the diamond chakram. Now, he was in unbearable pain and was covered in blood. He was filled with resentment. What weapon was that? Although it looked small, it was more terrifying than the collapse of a divine mountain. Andre was unconvinced. He was an expert with 3 severed shackles and possessed world-shaking combat strength. How could he not kill a low-level king? In the end, he was finished off before the battle even began. Could it be a legendary weapon from the East? He was filled with jealousy, resentment, and unwillingness. Homan was also in great pain. The right side of his chest had been torn open and his internal organs had been injured. His body was almost cleaved into 2 halves. His injuries were too serious. Is this the legendary heaven-flipping seal? He spat out a mouthful of bloody foam because he felt as if he had been crushed by an iron mountain. You're not being particular, but I'm not convinced. Andre roared with boundless resentment. He was indeed unresigned. He was strong enough, but he had been defeated before the battle even began. Who would use their trump card right from the start? He was furious. Wasn't there supposed to be a fierce battle first? He naturally understood that he had been careless and underestimated this human. The other party was too decisive, using a trump card far beyond anyone's imagination as soon as they met. "I'm sorry I've made you suffer." Chu Feng walked over with a smile and picked up the diamond chakram from the ground. It was as white as jade, and had not been stained with a single drop of blood. It was extremely exquisite. Chu Feng wore a resplendent smile as he looked down at the two without the slightest bit of sympathy. Andre and Homan were originally vicious people who wanted to kill him. Now they only had themselves to blame. "Take care, you two," Chu Feng said as he drew his black dagger and slashed at their necks without the slightest bit of hesitation. King-level blood splattered everywhere. These were two powerful beast kings. They might not die unless their heads were cut off. There was a chance that they could be resurrected. Chu Feng didn't want to leave behind any hidden dangers. "Ailyu," Andre and Homan let out a mournful cry before dying. They were too unwilling to accept this. They didn't even have the time to display their world-shaking abilities. They transformed into their true forms, two jackals. Their fur was a faint golden color and their bodies were 7 to 8 meters long. "Black Boss, don't just stand there. Quickly finish off the remaining beast race members. Otherwise, the secret of my diamond chakram will be revealed. I still want to use it on the Jilin King," Chu Feng hinted. The beast race members all felt their hair stand on end. They all jumped up and fled with all their might. However, the Black Yak had long since drawn his violet copper blade and blocked their path like a demonic god. He didn't feel any psychological burden because these beast race members weren't good people. Just now, they had joined forces with the two beast kings to kill them. He brandished his blade with all his might. Wherever the blade passed, it was like a great wave crashing into the sky. None of the beast race members managed to escape. Chu Feng didn't look at them. He stood in front of a majestic church and observed the carvings and engravings on it. He whispered, "The Holy See used to be so glorious. Can it still produce holy knights in this era? What are you standing there for?" The Black Yak walked over with a puzzled expression. "Pray, ask God to forgive your sins and your recklessness," Chu Feng replied. The entire ancient building complex was sprinkled with holy radiance. Naturally, the church was also glowing, making Chu Feng look even more divine. His body was glowing with a translucent luster. "Pah!" The Black Yak glared at him with a look of disdain. "People call you Demon King Chu, yet you still have the nerve to pray and communicate with God? I think you're trying to curry favor with Satan." Yellow Cattle also looked at him with disdain. "My heart is bright. Beneath my feet are thousands of corpses. I walk alone, blood flowing behind me. Even if I'm not understood one day, I'll press forward courageously. Go, go, go. I'm so sour that my teeth are falling out," the Black Yak taunted. "Ha ha!" The three burst into laughter. At this time, some of the king-level entities from the Vatican appeared. They were shocked to see the corpses and blood on the street. Andre and Homan could be considered experts, but they had been killed in the end. This caused them to feel apprehensive. Ferocious dragon crossing the river. This was the opinion of some of the king-level entities. They realized that this young man from the east was not someone to be trifled with. They had already received a report and knew what was going on. "Young man, you're truly unbridled. You're acting so arrogantly in the divine city. Aren't you afraid that we'll join hands to punish you?" A skinny, brown-haired man walked over, emitting a terrifying aura. This was a powerful beast king, and he took the initiative to attack Chu Feng. "Are you targeting me?" Chu Feng glanced at him. This time, Andre and Homan wanted to use the undead phoenix to eliminate him. After being exposed, they personally took action. It was obvious that they wanted to kill him in the city. This skinny, brown-haired man didn't even bother to mention these things and directly attacked him. He was simply too biased. Therefore, Chu Feng didn't bother to explain or argue. These king-level entities all knew what was going on. He wasn't afraid and directly confronted them. "You're too insolent," the skinny man coldly said. He was a Dole king, a close relative of the jackals. Andre and Homan were of the same race as him, and the three of them had a close relationship. Now, he wanted to take the lead and recruit the other beast kings to target Chu Feng. "Everyone, did you hear that? This young man from the east is extremely arrogant. He's only just set foot in the west, but he already wants to challenge the established order of the divine city. Do you think we can tolerate him?" The skinny Dole king said loudly. His brown hair danced in the wind as he emitted the terrifying fluctuations of a beast king. "That's right. Chu Feng, we don't care what you do in the east. But after coming to the Vatican, you'll have to follow the rules here." A Panther King nodded. "Enough. Dole King, Panther King, you've been blinded by hatred. You're too extreme. This is a place where the strong prey on the weak. Do you think the number of dead king-level entities is small? Moreover, Andre and Homan were the ones who stirred up trouble today. They wanted to kill Chu Feng, but in the end they were defeated. They only have themselves to blame." A tall man walked over. His physique was sturdy, and he had a head of long golden hair. He was like a male lion, exuding a valiant aura. He looked to be in his 30s and carried a broadsword on his back. This was a human called a Vidus. He was a typical Caucasian who stood out to target the Dole King. "Chu Feng, I've long since heard of your name. I didn't expect to meet you today." He walked over with a smile and greeted Chu Feng while introducing himself. Chu Feng naturally expressed his gratitude to the other party for stepping out at such a time. He could tell that this Caucasian called a Vidus was very powerful and had probably severed 3 shackles. "A Vidus, how can you stand out like this? Andre and Homan were killed in such a manner. You must give us an explanation." The Dole King was dissatisfied. "What do you want? Are you bullying us because we're outnumbered? Come here, this grandpa will teach you how to be a beast." The Black Yak stood out and released his Beast King aura in a high-profile manner. At this time, Yellow Cattle also erupted. He was small, but his entire body was emitting a resplendent radiance. This was a special breathing technique that enhanced his physique, making it difficult for people to see through his cultivation level. The Dole King, Panther King, and the other restless Beast Kings were all startled. The 2 that came with Chu Feng were also king-level experts? This was definitely a powerful deterrent. Chu Feng spoke. "Dole King, according to the rules set by the Beast Kings of the Divine City, I can challenge you to a duel if there's a dispute. Let's meet on the arena of life and death." "You don't have the right to challenge me. You're not a citizen of the Divine City," the Dole King said. He was riding a tiger and couldn't back down. At first, he had discussed with the beast race experts to attack Chu Feng together. However, there weren't many who responded at the critical moment. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have stepped forward. Now, only the Panther King had expressed his stance. In his eyes, the other Beast Kings were too cunning and despicable. They actually didn't say anything and just watched the show from the sidelines. "Who says I don't have the right? I understand the rules of the Divine City. Those who have been invited here are considered citizens of the city," Chu Feng calmly said. The Beast Kings were speechless. The 2 Beast Kings who had invited Chu Feng had been killed. They didn't know what to say about Andre and Homan. They brought this upon themselves. The Dole King was furious. He turned around and left. He didn't dare to accept Chu Feng's challenge alone. With 2 Beast Kings dead, he wouldn't have a good ending if he stood up for Chu Feng. Chu Feng spoke. "You slandered me first and wanted to gang up on me. Do you want to leave without giving me an explanation?" The Beast Kings revealed strange expressions. This was indeed a dragon crossing the river. Even under such circumstances, he was still fearless and was demanding an explanation from the Dole King. I'll give you two choices. One, apologize to me, and the other, accept my challenge. Chu Feng said. The Dole King's face was flushed red, and his brown hair danced wildly in the wind. He was truly infuriated. This was an undisguised threat. He turned around and looked at the people who had spoken to him earlier. In the end, apart from the Panther King, the others pretended not to see anything. The Dole King was furious, but there was nothing he could do. He was very realistic. Although angry, he still lowered his head and apologized to Chu Feng. Within the ancient castle, the Qilin King received the report and frowned in silence. He knew that this young opponent was much more powerful and terrifying than he had expected. There were no secrets in the Vatican, and the news quickly spread to the outside world. Chu Feng's 2 consecutive kills petrified the people in the outside world. Was he trying to defy the heavens? He had just entered the Vatican and he had already killed 2 beast kings? Many people couldn't believe it. Following that, all kinds of evidence began to circulate, including clear photograph. This caused a huge commotion in the West. The legendary demon King Chu was indeed terrifying. Comparatively speaking, the East was also shaken, but it was still better than the West. That was because this was not the first time they had experienced such a battle, so they were mentally prepared. This is more like his style. If he didn't cause a commotion after entering the Vatican, then he wouldn't be Demon King Chu. Someone commented. The people were speechless after hearing this. Both the East and the West were shaken. This was a glorious accomplishment. Chu Feng had killed 2 beast kings right after entering the Vatican. This caused a huge commotion. In the East, many beast race experts were wiping away their cold sweat. Demon King Chu was indeed as valiant as ever. Fortunately, he had gone to the West and was not at home. Chapter 162. The Vatican Divine City was like a mottled ancient scroll that had been unfolded. Majestic buildings stretched out in a continuous chain. Regardless of whether it was the ancient castles or the churches, all of them had a sense of history. The city we are standing in right now is exactly the same as the holy city of the Holy See's most glorious era as recorded in the history book. This is truly a miracle that has reappeared in the present age. Chu Feng's group of 3, accompanied by Avidus, were currently learning about this mysterious city. All of the buildings were glowing with a dark golden luster. After experiencing the baptism of countless years, they were still suffused with a holy radiance. There was a kind of solemn and divine energy lingering around them. "Oh, you are Chu Feng?" A golden-haired young man walked over from the opposite side of the street. His hair was resplendent as if it was burning with golden flames. His entire person looked like a sun god. When his eyes opened and closed, terrifying golden beams of light would fly out. Needless to say, this was a terrifying expert. His strength was extremely tyrannical, like the legendary divine knights of the Holy See. There was a kind of divine energy pervading the air. The Golden Lion King. Avidus was on guard. He immediately revealed his origins to warn Chu Feng's group. This was a Lion King with 4 severed shackles. He was extremely famous in the Vatican and possessed astonishing strength. Normally, not many people were willing to provoke him. In addition to his own strength, his identity was also extraordinary. Behind him was an old Lion King with 6 severed shackles. That existence was not a king of the current era. He was already close to being invincible many years ago. Although the 2 were not related by blood, they were from the same race. This was enough. The Golden Lion King walked over with his long golden hair dancing like flames. The street was illuminated in a splendid contrast. Every movement of his was accompanied by a terrifying aura. He smiled and looked at Chu Feng. His golden pupils were suffused with a terrifying energy. It was extremely dangerous. The scarlet flying knife on Chu Feng's body was already glowing in the dark. He was ready to strike at any moment. No matter how extraordinary this golden lion king was, he would not hold back as long as they were enemies. Of course, if he could reasonably avoid becoming enemies with such an expert, he would naturally not take action. He did not want to cause trouble, but he was not afraid of it either. The Golden Lion King's attitude was unclear as it circled around Chu Feng. Its terrifying aura was still fluctuating like the vast ocean. Soon after, its pupils became even more glaring like two small suns. Yellow Cattle and the Black Yak knew that things were not looking good. They were ready for battle. "Oh, little lion, you're here too." At this moment, an aged voice rang out. An old man walked over from the end of the street. He was very old, and his curled hair was already snow white. However, his dark blue eyes were still deep, and his face was also very rosy. He was also hale and hearty. This was an old man from the west. As soon as he appeared, the Golden Lion King's body tensed up. Its pupils rapidly contracted as it took a few steps back. "Schiller." The Golden Lion King spoke. He was extremely fearful of Schiller. Otherwise, he wouldn't have kept a safe distance. The old man named Schiller smiled and nodded at him before slowly approaching. The Golden Lion King also smiled and returned to normal. He then turned around and patted Chu Feng's shoulder. He gave him a deep look and immediately left. At the corner of the street, the Dhole King and Panther King appeared to welcome the Golden Lion King. The two were very disappointed and quickly left with him. Chu Feng's eyes burst out with divine light. The Lion King just now was indeed coming for him. It was the Dhole King and Panther King who had invited him. "Thank you, Senior," Chu Feng said to the old man. He knew that this old man had good intentions in scaring away the Lion King. "We're all humans. It's no trouble at all. There's no need to say too much." Schiller laughed and also left. Avidus took a deep breath and said, "You guys have to be careful of the experts in the city. Don't provoke them for no reason." The Black Dragon King, Undead Phoenix King, Arctic King, Silver Moon Wolf King, and Schiller were the most powerful existences in the Vatican. They had all severed 6 shackles. Schiller was the old man from just now. It was said that he came from the Holy See and was known as the Last Knight. He was incomparably familiar with this city. Chu Feng and Yellow Cattle were both alarmed. It was truly astonishing to see so many peerless experts gathered in a single city. The streets were paved with smooth stones, without a speck of dust on them. The buildings along the streets were built in the style of 1,000 years ago, simple and dignified. "The elder Lion King didn't come?" the Black Yak asked. "No, it's already chaotic enough with this golden lion around," Avidus replied. "Even an old knight like Schiller with 6 severed shackles wouldn't dare to touch him." Chu Feng discovered that he had established his might in this battle, and saved him a lot of trouble. At the very least, ordinary king-level entities wouldn't dare to cause trouble. However, the Golden Lion King and the Qilin King were definitely not among them. This was especially true for that Golden Lion King from just now. The Black Yak was indignant and said, "Find an opportunity to skin it." Was that a silent threat just now? If it wasn't for Old Man Schiller, it might have attacked already. The Divine City was very large. Some of the buildings glowed from time to time, and the sounds of prayers could be heard coming from the churches. Avidus told them that this was the sound of 1,000 years ago, engraved into the ancient walls. Finally, they walked into the center of the Divine City. There was a medicinal garden there that was enveloped by a layer of light. It was as if a large glowing bowl had been placed on the ground, preventing anyone from entering. This was the sacred medicinal garden, the most astonishing place in the Vatican. All the king-level entities had come for it. It was verdant and lush. The plants in the garden were all sparkling and glistening. Their entire bodies were translucent and emitting an astonishing amount of vitality. It was obvious at a glance that they were divine species. There was a small, dark green tree that was only as tall as a person. However, its trunk was upright and strong, and there was only a single fruit between its leaves, a golden peach. It swayed in the gentle breeze and blossomed with golden radiance. Just the sight of it was enough to move one's heart. This was no ordinary fruit. On the other side there was an ancient red tree that was 3 meters tall. From its branches to its leaves to its roots, it was as if it had been carved out of red agate. There were a few flower buds as big as the mouth of a bowl that were currently in full bloom. They were surrounded by a scarlet mist and suffused with a red mist. Needless to say, this was a divine flower. Not far away, there was a purple vine that was coiled around a huge boulder. At the end of the vine was a purplish-golden fruit the size of an infant's fist. Looking inside, there was an ancient tree that was more than 10 meters tall. Its entire body was silvery white, and there were actually snow-white flower buds that were more than a meter in diameter on its branches. At this moment, Chu Feng, Yellow Cattle, and the Black Yak's eyes were wide open. A casual glance was enough to see more than a dozen divine plants. Yellow Cattle asserted that any of the plants they had just seen was enough to allow them to evolve and improve their strength. No wonder so many king-level entities had rushed over. Who wouldn't be tempted by the growth of such divine plants? Moreover, this was only the outer region of the medicinal garden. The deeper parts were hazy and couldn't be seen clearly. They could only vaguely see the silhouettes of a few ancient trees. There are people on those ancient trees? Chu Feng was astonished. Through the hazy light, they could see the ancient branches swaying. It was as if there were some humanoid creatures hanging from them. Unfortunately, they couldn't see them clearly. They're not humans, they're fruits, Avidus informed. At first, they saw the silhouettes of flowers, but as time passed, the flowers bloomed, withered, and finally, human-shaped fruits grew out. This was too astonishing. There's something even more astonishing. Look over there. Avidus led the 3 of them a dozen steps forward and looked from another direction. There were a few withered old trees in the medicinal garden. They had very few leaves, and some of their roots were exposed on the ground. The scene was astonishing. What are those things? Even the Black Yak was stunned. The roots of these ancient trees were connected to living beings. One of the ancient trees had more of its roots exposed on the ground, so they could see it most clearly. There was a lady with her back facing the group, revealing her snow-white back and long golden hair. She was lying there, and the lower half of her body was still buried in the ground. There was a root connected to her body. She had grown out from the ground. What's going on? Even Chu Feng was flabbergasted. Although he used to talk nonsense to the 3 seeds in the stone box, saying that he would grow the mysterious maiden of the 9 heavens, it was only a joke. He didn't think it would come true. But now these ancient trees had really grown living beings. Chu Feng looked at the Yellow Cattle, wanting to hear its opinion. This sacred medicinal garden is similar to the area in the depths of Kunlun that we can't enter. There are holy trees reviving, but the things growing out of them are incomprehensible. Even the Yellow Cattle couldn't completely understand it. It couldn't determine whether the roots were connected to living beings or fruit. When will this boundary disappear? The Black Yak asked. He was a bit impatient and wanted nothing more than to kill his way in and pluck the mysterious fruit. With so many ancient trees bearing fruits or blooming flowers, this was the best time to do so. And in the depths of the medicinal garden, there was an area that couldn't be seen. Who knew what was growing there? The boundary isn't stable. At this point, the sacred medicinal garden could open at any time, Avidus said. In fact, we've tried to kill our way in but suffered great losses. He pointed towards the medicinal garden, hinting for them to take a closer look. Chu Feng noticed that in front of an ancient tree, there was a large rusty sword stuck in the ground. Only a small part of it was exposed to the ground. It seemed to be an antique. In another area, he saw a spear. It was originally golden, but now it had lost its luster and sharpness. There were 6 or 7 weapons in all directions. All of them were ancient objects that had existed for countless years. These weapons are terrifying. Let's not talk about the others. Just take the large sword under the ancient tree as an example. It looks rusty, but last time, it automatically rose from the ground and released a resplendent radiance, cutting the Beast King in half. Avidus said solemnly. Not to mention the other weapons, this large sword alone had killed a Beast King and left a terrifying wound on the Jilin King's body. Chu Feng was shaken. The two oxen were also astonished. They had to be careful of the ancient weapons once they entered. But when they turned to another direction, they saw several ancient trees glowing. Each of them had bowl-sized flowers blooming with auspicious colors. A single flower bud can allow us to evolve. These are divine petals. Yellow Cattle was drooling. There are some miraculous scenes that you guys can't see now. When we entered, we discovered a certain area in the depth. Pollen filled the sky and gushed out multicolored light. Sigh, it's a pity we couldn't get close at that time. Avidus sighed regretfully. The pollen condensed into a glowing mist and did not disperse into the distance. Even Chu Feng was moved. He wanted nothing more than to kill his way in. At this time they saw a lady. Her black hair hung loosely behind her slender figure. She was currently gazing at the sacred medicinal garden. They could only see the side of her beautiful figure without any flaws. She should be a beauty. She turned around. In the blink of an eye, raging black flames engulfed her. She emitted a terrifying aura and surged towards the group. Avidus's expression changed. He hurriedly pulled Chu Feng's group back. "Undead Phoenix King," he whispered, informing Chu Feng's group. "How many of you were loitering outside my residence?" The lady spoke. Although her voice was pleasant, it was extremely cold. "We were deceived. Someone wants to harm us," Chu Feng replied. Boom! A mass of raging black flames transformed into a spirit serpent on the ground. It rapidly approached, intending to engulf Chu Feng's group. Yellow Cattle's body tensed up. One had to know that this was an entity with 6 severed shackles. She was known as the Undead Phoenix King. Chu Feng held the diamond chakram in his hand, ready to strike at any moment. However, the black flames finally stopped advancing and gradually retreated. On the other side, a white-haired middle-aged man appeared. He smiled at the Phoenix King and said, "The sacred medicinal garden will open at any moment. The Phoenix King must conserve his energy." The raging flames danced around the black-haired lady's body as she turned to leave. "Many thanks, Arctic King." Avidus expressed his gratitude. "Don't mention it." The Phoenix King actually had no intention of attacking. The Arctic King laughed. His white hair was very eye-catching. He nodded at Chu Feng's group and left just like that. The Arctic King, the Black Dragon, Schiller, the Undead Phoenix, and the Silvermoon Wolf King were currently the strongest forces in the Vatican. They could be considered peerless experts. They came from different places. Some from the North Pole, some from the Mongolian steppe, and some from the most terrifying existences in Europe. "I want to become stronger," the Black Yak roared. In truth, Chu Feng and Yellow Cattle were also incomparably anxious. They wanted to enter the sacred medicinal garden and begin their evolutionary journey. After going around in a big circle, they finally had a better understanding of the Vatican and the situation in the medicinal garden. The boundary here was unstable, and there was an opportunity to barge in at any time. Finally, Chu Feng's group, accompanied by Avidus, chose a place to stay and waited for an opportunity. 2 days later, the opportunity arrived. Chapter 163. The outside world was not peaceful at all. First, it was Chu Feng's killing of 2 Beast Kings, causing a huge commotion and heated discussions. Then, news of the Vatican's barrier breaking came out in the last couple of days. Everyone could no longer sit still. What kind of place was the Vatican? It was a holy land shrouded in endless myths and legends. Its fame was too great, and it was impossible not to stir people's hearts. Everyone was paying close attention to it. Even the East was no exception. It was a hot topic. Just how many divine trees were there in the medicinal garden? What level could they evolve to after killing their way in? Not to mention the evolvers, even the ordinary people were burning with excitement. Unfortunately, ordinary people couldn't enter because only the top experts were there. It was said that all the king-level entities and corporations had been stimulated by the news. They all set out in succession, hoping to charge in at the last moment and get a share of the pie. Be it the East or the West, the Vatican had become the focus of discussion. Chu Feng is also there, but can he fight against so many king-level entities? What level will his strength reach if he evolves again? Some people were discussing this topic with great expectations. All kinds of reports had been going on for the past 2 days. The most widely circulated newspapers and periodicals had dedicated their pages to the Vatican. This matter could no longer be hidden, and no one was willing to cover it up. The whole world was watching. Vatican, sacred medicinal garden. All the beast kings had gathered outside the barrier, preparing to attack. So many beast kings? Chu Feng was shocked. He had been here for 2 days and had seen a few king-level entities, but he hadn't expected there to be so many. As far as the eye could see, the entire divine city was densely packed with beast kings. When the Black Dragon, Schiller, and the Arctic King summoned their beast kings to attack, the area outside the medicinal garden was thrown into chaos. Those who dared to come here were all supreme experts. They had been hiding in the ancient city for the past few days, but now that the barrier was about to be broken, they all moved out. The silver raptor spread its wings, sending sand and pebbles flying as it landed on the ground. The golden giant stomped on the streets, causing the ground of the divine city to tremble and rumble. The elephant covered in purple scales was as tall as a small mountain, and it arrived on purple clouds. The Golden Lion King, Qilin King, Avidus, and the other king-level entities had all appeared outside the medicinal garden. Most of them were in human form. All the experts had to listen to the arrangements of the 5 peak-level monarchs. They would be given missions to attack different areas. Everyone, the unstable barrier is our chance. I hope that we can do our best and kill our way in. The Black Dragon King spoke. He had a head full of jet-black hair. This was a middle-aged man. When his eyes opened and closed, divine radiance shot out explosively. Some experts lowered their heads, not daring to look him in the eye. Kill! The Silvermoon Wolf King spat out a single word. His silver hair was resplendent, and he was an extremely valiant male. He was the first to attack, blasting towards the barrier. The Black Dragon, Undead Phoenix, Schiller, the Arctic King, and the Silvermoon Wolf King stood in different positions and led the other Beast Kings in attacking, shaking up the increasingly unstable barrier. Roar! In just a short period of time, the entire city was filled with a cacophony of voices, thunderous beast roars, and sonorous bird cries. The entire city was shaking. There were simply too many king-level entities. Just the aura they exuded was unbearable, let alone their attacks. Any creature below the king level would immediately collapse to the ground. This was the battlefield of kings. Those with insufficient strength had to retreat from the city, lest their bodies suffer heavy injuries. From afar, the center of the Vatican was densely packed with experts. All of them were glowing as they attacked together. Their terrifying energy surged as if they wanted to tear the heaven and earth apart. Dong! The barrier outside the medicinal garden began to crack. There were even some places that had been penetrated by powerful forces and were on the verge of exploding. So many king-level entities had gathered in one place. This was something unimaginable in the past because the medicinal garden was simply too alluring. These experts had come from all over the world. The barrier shone with divine splendor like a huge bowl, overflowing with blazing light. It was on the verge of collapse and was violently shaking from the bombardment of experts. Cracks had even appeared in some places. King-level entities, follow me and kill our way in, Schiller roared. At this moment, he no longer looked like an old man. His body was glowing with a blinding light as if he was a god of war. His curly hair stood on end as he slashed at the barrier with a large sword in his hand. At this time, everyone had witnessed how terrifying an expert with 6 severed shackles was. That large sword was as resplendent as an exploding sun. With a puff, it split the barrier apart with a dazzling explosion of divine light. It was a terrifying scene. In the distance, Chu Feng drew in a breath of cold air. Was this the power of a peerless expert? As expected, he had transcended the mortal realm and entered the divine realm. He was simply too powerful. Schiller's single sword strike was even more powerful than the combined power of a group of king-level entities. So many people had attacked but failed to tear apart the barrier. Yet, he had cleaved it apart with a single sword strike. This was simply too shocking and intimidating. Attack! Schiller shouted. He needed to cooperate because the broken barrier was already healing. Holy light flowed out from it as if it wanted to repair the damage. Kill! The group of king-level entities behind him shouted as they attacked in unison. There were black claws, golden fists, and sharp spears, all of them attacked together. Boom! With Schiller in the lead, everyone worked together to blast the barrier open. The group of experts rushed in frantically. At almost the same time, the other barriers in the other directions were also broken, following which the entire area shook violently as the barrier collapsed. Experts swarmed in from every direction. The barrier would not be able to reappear for a short period of time. This was an opportunity for everyone. One by one, the king-level entities' eyes turned red as they charged in once again. Last time, a portion of them had also charged in but suffered great losses. This time, they were all on high alert as they charged towards the ancient trees. They could not afford to waste this opportunity no matter what. Only after entering did they discover that this space was extremely vast. It was like a Mount Sumeru in a mustard seed. Standing within it, one could feel that it was exceptionally vast. Chu Feng, Yellow Cattle, and the Black Yak stood together. After choosing a direction, they began to run in large strides. It was time to put their lives on the line. The fortune was right in front of them. Now, it all depended on their own abilities. Clang! In front of them, a spear rose from the ground. At first, it was dim and even speckled with rust. However, as the king-level entities charged in, it began to emit a resplendent radiance. Let's suppress it together. So what if it's a divine knight's weapon from the past? The divine fruit that can help us evolve is right in front of us. Nothing can stop us. Someone roared. The group of king-level entities made their move. Mysterious energy surged like the surging ocean as they attacked the spear. However, the spear emitted a blinding radiance like a bolt of golden lightning. In the blink of an eye, it had pierced through a king-level entity, causing king-level blood to splatter everywhere. That person let out a blood-curdling scream as his hair was stained with blood. His face was distorted as he struggled to retreat, but the spear was simply too terrifying. With a slight shake of the spear, his entire body was torn into pieces with a bang. He died on the spot. All the king-level entities were stunned. Could it be that they were as undefeatable as last time? One had to know that there were even more king-level entities that had entered this time. How could they not be able to suppress these ancient weapons? Chu Feng glanced at Yellow Cattle. What kind of weapon was that? Everyone was apprehensive. A king-level entity had died just like that. It was extremely terrifying. This spear has an imprint left behind from ancient times. It's supporting its killing power, Yellow Cattle informed solemnly. These weapons were all extraordinary. There were at least 6 or 7 ancient weapons flying about the entire medicinal garden. They were all extremely terrifying. Every time they attacked, king-level blood would splatter out. It was difficult to defend against them. These are the sect-guarding weapons of the Holy Sea's most glorious era. How come they're all here? A human expert said with a trembling voice. He was a Westerner and understood that period of history. The legendary weapons of the Holy See were divinized holy objects. They were boundlessly terrifying and were rumored to be incomparably powerful. Unexpectedly, they were all in the medicinal garden. Schiller and the Black Dragon have taken action. They actually want to subdue the Holy Sea's sect-guarding weapons. Someone cried out in alarm. Indeed, it wasn't just them. The Undead Phoenix and the Silvermoon Wolf King were also taking action. They were surrounded by a group of experts to help them suppress the weapons. Can we subdue one of them? The Black Yak's eyes were burning with passion. He was almost drooling. Don't think too much about it. Even if they severed 6 shackles, they might not be able to succeed even with the help of the Beast Kings. We need to avoid the sharp edge, Yellow Cattle said. At this time, the pressure on the people was greatly reduced. That was because the 5 peerless experts had taken action. With the help of their followers, each of them was able to resist an ancient weapon. Kill! The other Beast Kings saw this and avoided them. They charged forward to kill their way through the divine fruits and pollen. Who would be willing to miss such a rare opportunity? Last time, they were obstructed by the weapons. They had to abandon some corpses and retreat miserably. Today, they could finally charge through. However, there was still blood splattering everywhere. Even though the 5 experts and their followers were attacking to subdue the mysterious weapons left behind by the Holy See, this place was still filled with killing intent. The lightning-fast spear and the rusty greatsword would break free from time to time. Each time, they would cause a massacre, causing some of the Beast Kings to tremble in fear. A large group of people were obstructed and suffered heavy casualties. A small group of people charged through and approached the target. Chu Feng and the other 2 killed their way over. Their eyes were blazing as they stared fixedly at the ancient trees. Suddenly, a gigantic Beast King let out a miserable cry. It had been cleaved into 2 halves and disintegrated in an instant. What was going on? The people who had charged into this place were shocked. Hadn't they already avoided those terrifying ancient weapons? The creatures grown from the ancient tree roots, they've come back to life. Someone cried out. In the distance, the gigantic Beast King had been cleaved apart because it was close to an ancient tree. A snow-white palm had reached out from the soil with a sword of light and slashed it apart. This area was extremely dangerous. There were creatures in the soil connected to the roots of the ancient tree. They were actually able to put up a fight. Clang! Chu Feng was also attacked, but he immediately shot out his scarlet flying knife, which collided with a sword of light. A dazzling light erupted from the collision. There were creatures underground. They couldn't move freely, but they were truly alive and could put up a fight. Chi. The most terrifying was in a certain area. A pair of pure white wings had sprouted from the back of a lady who was crouching on the ground. They shook violently as the lower half of her body struggled free from the ground, emitting a powerful suppressive might. Angels, these creatures are grown from the ground? Chu Feng was astonished. The other king-level entities were also astonished. Could it be that the things buried under the soil were all creatures like angels? I don't care what you are. Kill. As king-level experts, how could they be weak? After a brief moment of absent-mindedness, everyone shouted and attacked these creatures. It had to be said that even though they were still entangled by the roots and had yet to fully mature, these creatures were still extremely terrifying. The lower half of their bodies were buried underground, and the part of their arms that had reached out still possessed terrifying destructive power. The sacred medicinal garden was fraught with danger at every step. It looked divine and contained great fortunes, but it was also possible to lose one's life at any moment. The whole area was splattered with blood. A number of experts had been killed under the divine tree. The Scarlet King blood was a ghastly sight to behold. The black yak cursed. There was a bone-deep wound on his arm. Just now, he had almost lost one of his arms. It was truly a dangerous situation. Chu Feng, Yellow Cattle, and the black yak joined hands and finally killed their way through. They charged through this terrifying area and approached the sacred and auspicious ancient forest. Oh heavens, I feel like I'm about to ascend, haha! Someone laughed loudly, unable to restrain his excitement. A small number of king-level entities were the first to kill their way over. They stood amidst the radiant medicinal garden and were shaken by the sight. The ancient trees were bearing fruits and blooming flowers. It was incomparably gorgeous. Chu Feng, Yellow Cattle, and the black yak had also killed their way over. They had all suffered some injuries and were covered in blood, but they didn't feel any pain. Their hearts were full of joy and excitement. Standing in this medicinal garden, they felt extremely comfortable. All the pores on their bodies opened up as the medicinal fragrance seeped into their flesh and blood. It made them feel as though they were about to leave the ground. Their bodies were extremely light. Ha ha! The black yak laughed wildly. He was too excited. Chu Feng and Yellow Ox were also excited. They sprang into action at the first sign of trouble. They rushed up the ancient tree, where there were bright flowers and sparkling fruits. Humph! A cold snort was heard, filled with killing intent. A few people approached from afar. The leader was a tall and straight young man. His long hair was like a burning golden flame, and his eyes were emitting blazing beams of light. His aura was terrifying, and he looked like a sun god. The Golden Lion King had arrived. Beside him were the Dhole King and the Panther King. These two were sneering as they stared at Chu Feng's group. Humph! Another cold snort was heard. A tall figure walked over from afar. His scarlet hair was draped over his shoulders, his face was as white as jade, and his eyes were brilliant. He was emitting an extremely powerful aura. The Jilin King had arrived. He originally had a wound on his body. It was caused by the rusty greatsword during the attack on the sacred medicinal garden, and it was difficult to heal. However, with the help of the Black Dragon, he was able to force out a beam of holy light and remove the hidden danger. As a fellow member of the dragon race, the Black Dragon took good care of him. At this time, the Jilin King's body was suffused with killing intent. His scarlet hair danced in the wind, and a cold smile appeared on his handsome face. The black yak and Yellow Cattle frowned. They knew they were in deep trouble. Chu Feng calmly said, "The opportunity is fleeting. Now is not the time to settle our grudges. Let's go out and fight to our heart's content after plucking the divine fruits." This place was too dangerous, and no one knew when an accident would occur. The Jilin King didn't say anything. On the other side, the Dhole King and Panther King laughed coldly, revealing a mocking smile. "You still want to obtain fortune? Do you have a place to stand here?" The other experts laughed loudly as the two taunted. Chu Feng's eyes were blazing as he glared at them. Immediately, the Dhole King and Panther King's hearts palpitated, and they couldn't help but shut their mouths. The Lion King strode forward, his long golden hair draped over his shoulders. His entire body was glowing as if he was enveloped by a resplendent sun. A divine energy pervaded the air, shaking everyone's hearts. "All of you scram!" The Golden Lion King opened his mouth. His tone was cold and incomparably tyrannical. He stared at Chu Feng's group, intending to chase them away without giving them any fortune. Clang! A scarlet flying sword soared into the sky, filled with killing intent. Chapter 164. The situation was dire. In front of them was the Golden Lion King, whose strength could intimidate the entire Vatican. Behind them was the Jilin King, a western dragon that could look down on ordinary beast kings. These two were ruthless fellows, one more powerful than the other. Moreover, they had severed 4 shackles and could do as they pleased in the Vatican as long as they avoided the 5 peerless experts. The scarlet flying knife hung in the air, its entire body radiating resplendent divine light and surging with killing intent. Chu Feng had been forced into a corner. He could only fight. How could he retreat when the other party had pointed a sword at his nose? Clang! The black yak silently drew his violet copper blade. He was incomparably solemn. At this moment, he didn't speak a single word. He could only fight to the death. Yellow Cow's nose and mouth were suffused with white mist. Although his body wasn't big, he was emitting terrifying energy fluctuations. He was circulating a special breathing technique. The Golden Lion King stood there, his body tall and straight. His entire body was enveloped in golden light, as though he was the descendant of a god. He emitted a terrifying aura that intimidated all the beast kings present. His long golden hair danced in the wind as his aura became increasingly astonishing. At this moment, even his pupils were golden. He said with an arrogant expression, "You guys don't want to scram?" The Golden Lion King spoke in the Eastern language. His intonation was very proper, and he was actually quite proficient in it. He looked down at them with a domineering attitude, completely disregarding Chu Feng's group. His attitude was tyrannical to the extreme. "Damned lion, I'll skin you alive!" the black yak roared. He was burning with anger. Ever since he was born, no one had dared to look down on him like this. Chu Feng's heart was in turmoil. He had long since been angered. He was considering whether to use the diamond chakram to kill the Golden Lion King or the Qilin King. Which one was more threatening? Roar! Suddenly, a draconic roar was heard from afar. It was the Black Dragon King's roar, shaking the entire sacred medicinal garden. Even the ground was trembling. An expert with 6 severed shackles was too terrifying. A faint draconic might pervaded the air, accompanied by spiritual fluctuations. The Qilin King sensed it immediately. He revealed an expression of hesitation, but in the end, he turned around and rushed towards the Black Dragon King. All the beast kings present were astonished. The Qilin King had actually turned around and left at such a critical juncture. Did the Black Dragon King have such a great influence on him? Interesting. The Golden Lion King watched Jilin's departing figure before turning around. Golden beams of light shot out from his eyes as he closed in on Chu Feng's group. He had decided to take action and seize all the fortunes here. "Kill!" Chu Feng shouted. He immediately activated the scarlet flying sword and slashed forward. Dang! It had to be said that an entity with 4 severed shackles was too terrifying. The Golden Lion King's right palm glowed like a miniature sun as it forcefully blocked the flying sword. Whether it was his reaction speed or his strength, they were both shocking. He shook off the scarlet sword. Chi! At this moment, the black yak also moved. He slashed with his purple sword. There was nothing more to say in the face of such a high-level king-level entity. All he could do was fight to the death. Dang! The Golden Lion King's reaction was too fast. He shifted his body to the side and struck the back of the blade with his palm. The enormous force caused the black yak's palm to heat up and almost split open with blood flowing out. This lion's strength was terrifying. Its mouth and nose were taking in and sending out golden multicolored mist. This made everyone's expressions change, because its breathing rhythm was a bit strange. Obviously, he had obtained a mysterious inheritance. You're just a bunch of low-level king-level entities, yet you dare to fight me? He was incomparably conceited. Boom! At this moment, the black yak flipped out. After all, he was a king-level expert with 3 severed shackles. He brandished his purple sword and slashed wildly. At the same time, mist began to flow out of his mouth and nose as his breathing rhythm changed. Chi! At the same time, the scarlet flying sword erupted with even greater divine might. Chu Feng was also circulating his special breathing technique to strengthen his body. His spiritual energy became even more majestic as he controlled his sword to attack. The Golden Lion King's expression changed. He had obtained a secret inheritance before and naturally understood that these people had also obtained great fortunes. They were people with backgrounds. Dang. The Golden Lion King swung his golden fists, smashing the flying sword and blocking the copper sword. His hair was scattered behind his back. He was incomparably heroic, like a golden god of war. So what if you have some skills? I'm enough to crush you all. He was still confident. After severing his fourth shackle, his strength, speed, and reflexes had all increased by a large margin. You want to gang up on the Lion King? Here we come. The Dhole King and Panther King also moved, sneering as they pressed forward. They were confident in their backing. With the Lion King here, they felt that it was enough to kill everyone. Boom! Yellow Cow attacked. He leapt up and used his demon ox fists to attack the two. His whole body was glowing. Although he looked like a child, his strength was boundless. You want to compete in numbers? Here we come. There were 3 other king-level entities beside him. They all laughed loudly and rushed over to surround Chu Feng's group. The Golden Lion King revealed a cruel smile. Although he was arrogant, he was not inflexible and did not stop them. Black Boss, you go and deal with them, Chu Feng whispered, letting the Black Yak temporarily block the 3 king-level entities. The Black Yak glanced deeply at him and didn't say a word. He waved his purple sword and rushed towards the 3 king-level entities. Immediately they were divided into 3 groups. Yellow Cow was fighting 1 against 2 against the Dhole King and Panther King. The Black Yak, on the other hand, was fighting against 3 king-level entities at once. The one in the most danger was naturally Chu Feng. Although he only had 1 opponent, he was simply too powerful. Every movement of his was accompanied by a mighty astral wind, destroying everything in its path. One could see the surrounding millstone-sized rocks flying high into the sky and exploding under the Lion King's fist. He seemed to be invincible. In terms of true strength, Chu Feng was only at the level of 1 severed shackle. He was no match for the Golden Lion King. The difference in realm was too great. But in a battle of life and death, who would care about a fair fight? This was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. The weak could only die in vain. Clang! 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 The sword's cry shook the sky. Chu Feng evaded the Golden Lion King and activated his flying sword from a certain distance. He didn't engage in close combat with the Lion King. This was the advantage of the Imperial Sword technique. Otherwise, he would most likely be in danger. It wasn't that he wasn't strong enough. The other king-level entities had long since become dumbfounded. Chu Feng had only broken through to the king level and was considered a low-level king-level entity. Yet, he was fighting the Golden Lion King. One had to know that in the Vatican, apart from the 5 peerless experts, who would dare say they could suppress this Golden Lion King? The Golden Lion King's strength was unfathomable. After severing his 4th shackle, he was incomparably terrifying. Moreover, he had grasped a strange breathing technique which increased his strength by an entire level. At the mention of the Golden Lion King, people would think of him as easily crushing his opponent. But today, he was being entangled by a human who had only severed his 1st shackle. You have some skill, but you're still not up to par. Are you even worthy of competing with me? You're far from it, the Golden Lion King said coldly. His long golden hair danced in the wind as he struck the flying sword horizontally. Clang, clang, clang. Chu Feng used his powerful spiritual energy to control the flying sword and hacked continuously. It was enough to slice off a mountain peak, but the Golden Lion King was too ferocious. His strength was so great that it was terrifying. Every time he punched out, the void would explode. He smashed over at supersonic speeds, causing the flying sword to tremble and fly out continuously. The Golden Lion King closed in step by step. His divine might intimidated all the kings present. Having severed 4 shackles was an advantage. His innate strength was incomparably tyrannical. His divine might was unstoppable. The black yak roared from afar, "Isn't it just that you've severed 4 shackles? Do you think it's honorable to beat someone who has just entered the king realm?" He was interfering because he was worried about Chu Feng. The difference between the two was too great. With the Golden Lion King's unrivaled momentum, Chu Feng would be in danger if he were to get close. "I'm just that strong. I can crush ants like you. Are you not satisfied?" The Golden Lion King was unmoved. He was boundlessly tyrannical as he charged forward. Moreover, his eyes suddenly erupted with golden light. He opened his mouth and let out a lion's roar that shook the entire Vatican and resounded throughout the entire sacred medicinal garden. This lion's roar was too powerful. Some of the king-level entities nearby felt their minds go blank. They almost fainted from the sudden sound waves. The Golden Lion King's expression was cold. His roar was aimed at the black yak. One could see the golden ripples rushing towards him in an attempt to knock him out. Moo! The demon ox's roar shook the heaven and earth. The black yak went berserk and activated the sound waves to defend himself. At the same time, the yellow cattle also roared to help defend. "It's your turn." The Golden Lion King realized that it was ineffective. He once again focused on dealing with Chu Feng. He ran forward with extreme speed, wanting to kill him first. Roar! He roared once again. Golden energy ripples surged and swept towards Chu Feng. It attacked the flying swords and wanted to use the sound waves to suppress the opponent. Chu Feng shouted lightly. He understood the demon ox's roar and could naturally defend himself. However, he did not attack head-on. Instead, he shifted his body to the side and evaded the golden light. "You've just severed 1 shackle and yet you dare fight me? Hand over your life!" The Golden Lion King roared. His hair was in disarray as he went berserk. His golden pupils became even more terrifying. He attacked repeatedly, sending the flying swords flying into the distance. He closed in on Chu Feng and revealed a cold and cruel smile as he unleashed his killing moves. The surrounding king-level entities all believed that Chu Feng was finished. If the Lion King were to force him into a corner, he would die without a doubt. He would be torn to pieces in the blink of an eye. Chu Feng's expression was cold. He hadn't said a single word since the start of the battle. Now that he had found an opportunity, he suddenly threw out the diamond chakram towards the charging Lion King. The Golden Lion King was extremely fast. After deflecting the flying swords from dozens of meters away, he immediately rushed over. His golden hair flew backwards and his face was filled with a cold, killing intent. He had already raised his right fist, ready to smash Chu Feng to pieces. However, a snow-white beam of light flew over at this moment. It covered a distance of more than 10 meters in an instant, and there was no time to dodge. This time, Chu Feng exerted all of his strength. He had been accumulating energy for a long time and had almost exhausted all of it. He poured all of it into the snow-white weapon and attacked with all his might. The air exploded. This time, the diamond chakram's power exceeded that of the past. It reached 3 times the speed of sound and erupted with white light like the explosion of the sun. The yellow cattle was shocked. He felt that this item was strange. Otherwise, how could it be so powerful? Perhaps he had made a mistake. The Golden Lion King reacted quickly and roared crazily. His entire body seemed to be on fire as he erupted with the most powerful energy. He did his best to evade and at the same time, made preparations to meet the attack head-on. Thump! The diamond chakram struck his shoulder and not his head. This made Chu Feng rather regretful. Even so, the Golden Lion King let out an earth-shattering roar as he suffered an unimaginable injury. The diamond chakram flew over and directly broke his shoulder. Moreover, it rotated and tore apart the right side of his body, almost causing his entire arm and chest to fall off. This kind of injury was extremely frightening. The Lion King was in unbearable pain. His vision darkened and he almost fainted. The right side of his body seemed to have been hacked by a heavenly blade. It was torn apart and almost dismembered. The wound extended to his abdomen and blood gushed out. If it were an ordinary beast king, they would most likely have been torn apart. The diamond chakram's rotation was too violent and terrifying. This was Chu Feng's most powerful attack. Even his body had been hollowed out. He quickly circulated his breathing technique to recover his physical body. At the same time, his spiritual energy pervaded the air and controlled the flying sword to slash forward. The Golden Lion King leapt out. The flying sword was originally aimed at his neck, but in the end it left a bone-deep gash on his chest. Blood splattered everywhere. The Golden Lion King's reaction speed had clearly slowed down after being wounded by the diamond chakram. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been struck. He retreated while roaring. His golden hair was stained with blood and his face was full of anger and apprehension. It was too dangerous just now. He had almost died to the diamond chakram. This made him go mad with anger. Kill! Chu Feng controlled the flying sword and slashed out once again. At the same time, he used a special breathing technique to recover the mysterious energy within his body. He flew up and attacked forward. He wanted to take advantage of the Golden Lion King's injuries to take his life. He didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt for using such a powerful killing weapon like the diamond chakram. It couldn't be considered an unfair victory because the other party's realm was much higher than his. Roar! The Lion King let out a terrifying roar. At this moment, he was incomparably decisive and actually turned to flee. His injuries were too severe and the right side of his body had almost fallen off. He was afraid that he would die here if the battle continued. Heroic spirit and face couldn't restrict him at all. He didn't care about these things and simply ran away. Everyone was dumbfounded. The intimidating Lion King was actually running away just like that? Chu Feng controlled the flying sword and delivered the final blow. With a pft, it left a deep wound on the Lion King's back. Blood splattered everywhere and the wound was so deep that bones could be seen. Very soon, the Lion King had left the flying sword's attack range and disappeared. Chu Feng didn't give chase and immediately found the diamond chakram. At this time, the Dole King, Panther King, and the others were all frightened out of their wits. Where do you think you're going? Chu Feng once again shot out the diamond chakram. It broke through the sound barrier and struck the Panther King's back, causing him to explode on the spot and die a violent death. The remaining king-level entities didn't dare to stay any longer and fled like madmen. The other kings were all indescribably shaken and dumbfounded. They had personally witnessed this battle and were all petrified. If news of this battle were to spread to the outside world, it would surely cause a huge commotion. That was the Lion King known to be undefeated within the same realm, yet he was actually forced to flee from the sacred medicinal garden and almost lost his life. I'm begging for subscriptions and monthly tickets. Chapter 165. The Lion King had escaped with heavy injuries. His right arm and half of his body had almost been severed by the diamond chakram. This scene shook the entire Vatican. Am I seeing things? The one covered in blood and escaping at the sound barrier was the African Lion King? Many people along the way were wide-eyed. In the depths of the holy medicinal garden, Chu Feng picked up the white diamond chakram. There was not a single trace of blood on it. It was lustrous and translucent, like the work of a master artist. On the ground, the Leopard King's body had been torn into pieces. It had died a miserable death. At present, there were only a few king-level entities here. None of them spoke. All of them had been subdued. Even the Lion King with 4 severed shackles had been defeated. Who wouldn't be afraid of such a demon king? What are you waiting for? Yellow Cattle was excited and transmitted his voice. It was time to reap the harvest. The divine trees in the garden were filled with brilliant fruits, causing people to drool with desire. Moo! The black yak had long since become impatient. With a roar, he rushed over excitedly and began to harvest the mutant fruits. Chu Feng held the diamond chakram in his hand. He was in no hurry to act. Instead, he glanced around at the remaining king-level entities. These people's hair stood on end. Their bodies were all tensed up, they were all extremely nervous. Who knew what Demon King Chu was planning? Who would be able to endure it if he attacked them? King Chu, there are dozens of divine trees here, enough for all of us to evolve together. Rest assured, we won't dare to offend you. A powerful beast race expert spoke, expressing his goodwill towards Chu Feng. He also tactfully indicated that he could choose some of the ancient trees first. To the conceited king-level entities, this could be considered a compromise. They really didn't want to provoke this Demon King Chu because the shiny ring-shaped weapon in his hand was too terrifying. Who was the Lion King? He was known to be peerless within the same realm. He had always swept through his opponents as easily as crushing dry weed. He had never been defeated since he was born. Of course, this was excluding peerless experts with 6 severed shackles. Who wouldn't be afraid of such a tyrannical king who could sweep through all the beast kings? This was definitely a ruthless fellow. Chu Feng nodded. It was enough to intimidate them. He moved quickly and leaped onto an ancient tree. Ha ha! The black yak was delighted and excited. It was like a cow chewing on a peony. He ate several fruits and even bit off a bowl-sized flower bud. His mouth was full of multicolored light. The fragrance of fruits assailed the nostrils. Flower buds bloomed, all sorts of multicolored lights flowed about, and a pure and holy mist suffused the air. It was simply like heaven. Strange, there's no taste at all. The black yak recalled the taste and rubbed his belly. He didn't feel full. Rich spiritual essence surged within the sacred medicinal garden. This place was brightly colored, as if they had arrived in a world of legends. Ancient trees took root here one after another, releasing holy light. Yellow Cattle's movements were very skillful and agile. It opened its mouth and bit a golden peach into its mouth, swallowing it in 2 or 3 bites. Then, he rushed to the front of a purple vine, plucked the only fruit on it that was the size of an infant's fist, and put it into his mouth. How strange. It lacks flavor. Yellow Ox was doubtful. According to the records in the book, such a purple fruit should have a terrifying medicinal effect. However, it was very bland after entering his mouth. Apart from being fragrant, it didn't even have the sweetness of the fruit. He was moving quickly, jumping from one ancient tree to another. He was sniffing a flower that was blooming with blue light and circulating a special breathing technique. What's going on? This time, Yellow Cattle was even more puzzled. The flower looked extremely extraordinary. It was a translucent dark blue with hundreds of beams of multicolored light. It was so bright that one couldn't open their eyes. However, when it actually absorbed the pollen, it wasn't as smooth as expected. Only a small amount of blue light entered its nose and mouth. Yellow Cattle was bewildered. He switched to another ancient tree, but this happened several times in a row. He knew something was wrong, and this time, the problem wasn't small. On the other side, Chu Feng was also suspicious. The fragrance of the flowers assailed the nostrils. A dense mist was rising, and the multicolored light was boundless. The fragrance penetrated the heart and refreshed the mind. It made people feel as if they were about to leave the earth and ascend to heaven. However, the amount of effective substance absorbed was very limited when it came into contact with the flowers. Boom! Chu Feng's speed was extremely fast. He traversed over 100 meters and landed on the ground, sending rocks and soil flying everywhere. Several king-level entities in the vicinity immediately moved out of the way. He had his eyes on an ancient tree that was completely red like an agate. There were a few dazzling flower buds on its branches that were about to bloom. They were curled up in scarlet clouds and suffused with a red mist. It seemed to be a divine flower. Chu Feng circulated his special breathing technique. All the pores on his body relaxed as he absorbed the red pollen. However, only a few strands flew out of the flowers. Yellow cattle, something's wrong here. Chu Feng flew away with a swoosh. He arrived in front of Yellow Cattle and revealed a doubtful expression. Under normal circumstances, the scarlet flowers that were as big as the mouth of a bowl and were overflowing with colorful light would definitely contain astonishing medicinal effects. It would be enough for Chu Feng to evolve. However, he discovered that he had only absorbed a small amount of the pollen. There weren't many effective substances in the flowers. There's indeed a problem. This place has magnified our sense of smell. The fragrance of the flowers isn't as strong as it used to be. Even our vision has been deceived. Yellow Cattle's expression was solemn. The black yak also rushed over, cursing incessantly. He had eaten a bellyful of fruits and was almost stuffed. However, the effects weren't as great as he had imagined. Yellow Cattle was bewildered and said, "I've always felt that it was strange. The deepest parts of Kunlun and the pilgrimage grounds have yet to fully recover. How come there are hundreds of divine trees in the Vatican that are blossoming and bearing fruit one step ahead of us? Now, it seems that something's wrong. There's still a certain amount of effect. I feel that I can also evolve if I eat hundreds of these fruits," the black yak said. Under normal circumstances, only one or two of these seemingly blooming flowers and fruits would be enough for him to evolve. That was because they were simply too divine. But now, the situation was completely different. He actually needed hundreds of them. There's indeed a certain amount of effect, but there's definitely a big problem here. This is the last harvest, we have to leave immediately. Yellow Cattle's little face was solemn. The next moment, Chu Feng and the other two broke through the sound barrier at a speed akin to thunder as they traversed the area frantically. The black yak stuffed every fruit he saw into his mouth and nibbled on every flower petal he saw. He was like a glutton as he chewed his way through the area and even swallowed some branches. Chu Feng circulated his breathing technique with all his might as he weaved through the area. He paused briefly in front of every translucent flower bud and then left. That was because there were only a few wisps of light floating up and being absorbed by him. I ate a mutant fruit with strong medicinal effects. The black yak was pleasantly surprised. He felt his whole body boiling and his blood boiling. However, after calming down, this made them even more suspicious and uneasy. Phew! The brilliant mist pervaded the air. Chu Feng also found a flower bud in the depths of the ancient forest. Its effects were astonishing. He was drowned in the dense mist and had no time to slowly absorb it. He immediately plucked the flower bud and put it in his mouth before rushing to the next area. "What's that?" Chu Feng and the other two rushed to the depths of the sacred medicinal garden and saw two hazy barriers in front of them. Within one of the barriers, there were a number of ancient trees with humanoid creatures hanging from them. It looked like they were bearing fruit. Chu Feng and the others didn't touch the barrier because they felt it was too dangerous. The other was a small barrier, silvery and transparent. There was a small, brightly colored tree within it. It was resplendent and incomparably divine. What kind of tree was this? There was also a special barrier protecting it. The three stared at it intently, but soon, they revealed astonished expressions. There were beads of blood rolling on the leaves of the brightly colored tree. They were sparkling and translucent, accompanied by scarlet clouds. Although beautiful, it was also terrifying. There seemed to be something buried under the soil at the base of the tree. Upon closer inspection, they were horrified to find that there were king-level scales and feathers exposed. "That's..." The black yak's eyes went round and he felt his scalp go numb. In the past, the Black Yak had mentioned several times that he knew a beast king who had long since arrived at the Vatican to fight for fortunes and opportunities. He had even asked for his help. Who would have thought that in just a short period of time, an old friend of his would be buried here? Clearly, he was dead. I was wondering why I didn't see them at the Divine City. The Black Yak's expression was solemn. He then stared at a certain place and saw a piece of lustrous white flesh. Don't tell me that's the nose of the Indian White Raja. He was shocked. The White Raja was absolutely terrifying. Could it be that he had also died here? It's very similar to what was recorded in the ancient books. Feeding on rare blood, this tree is very strange. Not good, let's go. Yellow Cow's expression changed as he thought of something. The next moment, they fled for their lives. Boom! The air exploded as if thunder had fallen from the heavens. Chu Feng and the other two had reached the limits of their physical endurance and were running at a speed far beyond their normal limit. They were just like the Lion King not long ago, fleeing with all their might. At this time, even more king-level entities had arrived at the medicinal garden. They stared at the flower buds and fruits on the divine tree with blazing eyes. Then, all of them roared and rushed forward. Danger, run! Chu Feng and the other two roared in warning. It was safest for everyone to escape together. If something unexpected happened, they would be able to take care of each other. Now, the three of them had already guessed that this was a terrifying trap. Perhaps many kings would die without a burial ground. Run! No matter how loudly they roared, no one paid them any heed. Some experts looked at them as if they were looking at idiots. They had left so many divine fruits and buds behind, and now they wanted to run? They must be sick in the head. Only the king-level entities who had entered with Chu Feng and the others were alarmed. They had long since felt that something was amiss. They had eaten many mutant fruits, but the medicinal effects weren't ideal. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. They followed suit and ran. Within the divine city, Schiller was laughing merrily. He was incomparably benevolent as he stood on top of a church and gazed at the medicinal garden. His eyes flickered with resplendent light as his aged body surged with waves of holy light. He was known as the last knight with 6 severed shackles. He was one of the most powerful existences in the world. Moreover, as an elder of the Holy See, few understood the Vatican better than he did. The Arctic King was also present. His white hair hung loosely behind him as he stood on top of the church, bathing in the holy light. He revealed a mouthful of snow-white teeth with a terrifying smile. This was completely different from his usual amiable and approachable temperament. It has begun. Schiller smiled. He became increasingly holy and auspicious as his entire body was submerged in the holy light. In the depths of the medicinal garden, even the Silver Wolf King and the Undead Phoenix King had killed their way in. They had already subdued one of the Holy See's signature weapons. The experts of different races were all roaring. The medicinal garden was boiling with excitement as they fought over the fortunes and fortunes. However, without a sound, many ancient trees within the medicinal garden disappeared into the ground. There were only a few trees left in the area, and it was no longer as holy as before. This caused everyone to be stunned. Silver light lingered in the air as a 3-meter-tall tree emerged from the ground. It was surrounded by silver lightning and emitted a terrifying aura. At this moment, the Undead Phoenix King's entire body was covered in raging flames. Her body tensed up as she spread her wings in an attempt to escape. But it was too late. There were over 10 fruits growing on the silver tree. Some of them fell off and flew in all directions. A walnut tree? The ordinary beast kings were bewildered. They didn't sense the danger because this place had rendered their divine instincts useless. The Vatican was a holy land that had been shrouded in myths and legends since ancient times. That silvery white tree was indeed a walnut tree, but it had long since transformed to an unimaginable level of terror. At this time, the silver walnuts fell off and exploded in all directions. Boom, boom, boom. Terrifying silver mushroom clouds rose one after another. The energy was terrifying to the extreme. Chapter 166. Who would have thought that their joyous entry into the medicinal garden would lead to such a shocking turn of events? The group of beast kings roared in anger. Their bodies glowed as they exerted all the energy in their bodies to protect themselves and escape at the same time. However, it was too late. The moment the silver walnut fell, it exploded. It was enough to destroy mountains and evaporate rivers. It was incomparably ferocious. Suddenly, the silver energy surged and shot into the sky. Mushroom clouds bloomed one after another, creating a beautiful scene from afar. However, this was cruel. The silver clouds carried blood blossoming one after another, becoming a ghastly embellishment. Some of the beast kings roared in anger, but to no avail. They were quickly torn to shreds. This silver energy was too terrifying. It wasn't a true nuclear bomb, but its power was enough to make the beast kings tremble in fear. There was no way to block it. That walnut tree was too mysterious and possessed unparalleled destructive power. It only had a weak will, but the fruits it bore were terrifying to the extreme. This was a sacred battle tree that obeyed orders and had just begun to awaken. A total of 10 fruits fell from the tree, flying in all directions and exploding at the same time. The entire pocket dimension was covered in a boundless silver radiance. The sound was even more terrifying than thunder from the 9 heavens. King-level blood splattered everywhere within the sacred medicinal garden. Even though the king-level entities were capable of withstanding guided missiles, they were still unable to withstand this attack. Amidst the rumbling sounds, the silver energy swept past, causing them to fall like straws. They were unable to defend themselves. Their glowing bodies were pierced through and shattered into pieces. There were countless casualties. How splendid! The Vatican hasn't bathed in such spirit blood for many years. This place is too holy, Schiller commented. He stood in the distance with a gentle smile on his face. Strands of radiance seeped out from his pores as his aura grew stronger. That was because he was ready for battle. The myriad spirit blood medicine is finally ripe. The Arctic King spoke with a cruel smile. His white hair fluttered even though there was no wind. He glanced at Schiller and said, "So many beast kings of different races have died. It's time for that multicolored tree to grow. I can't wait any longer." This was a trap, one that contained shocking killing intent. The Vatican's so-called opportunities, the tree full of divine fruits, were simply not good enough. There were indeed flower buds that could allow one to evolve, but they were few and far between. Moreover, it was useless against experts of their level. All of this was to lure the kings here. Schiller was known as the world's last knight with a kind smile on his face. But in the end, he was so ruthless. He understood the Vatican and knew its secret. He worked together with the Arctic King and the Black Dragon King to set up a heaven-shaking ambush. He needed the blood of various kings to water a mysterious plant. That was a precious medicine that could truly allow him to continuously evolve. Old man, is this the beginning or the end? You won't plot against me too, will you? The Arctic King suddenly turned around and looked at Schiller. Schiller's origins were mysterious. He was known as the last knight of light of the Holy See, but in the eyes of the King of the North Pole, calling him a knight of darkness was more appropriate. You're worrying too much. Let's get ready for battle. Some people definitely won't die. We'll need you and me to take action, Schiller said. I hope we're just overthinking things. But the Holy See has always been unfathomable. How could they only have a knight like you who has fallen into darkness? The Black Dragon King also appeared. Even in the light, there's always a shadow behind us. Whose path is different? Schiller was bathed in radiance. Don't worry, I'll cooperate with you with sincerity. I'll trust you for now, the Black Dragon King said. Look further ahead. One famed mountain, one path. One day the world will change. At that time, so what if those people come? We've already risen to prominence, and are innately undefeatable. So what if they have ancient divine techniques? Schiller spoke. His aura became terrifying as a divine radiance rushed towards the sky. The sacred medicinal garden belongs to us. With the opening of the boundary, we'll have everything. Boom! Within the sacred medicinal garden, the final explosion of the silver walnut had finally ended. The mushroom cloud dispersed. At this time, not to mention the ordinary king-level entities, even the undead phoenix fell from the sky. The peerless expert with 6 severed shackles was bleeding profusely. Her black wings were full of scars and bloodstains, especially the rusty greatsword on her body, which was now glowing with a peerless divine radiance, slashed towards the undead phoenix with great ferocity. It was precisely in order to subdue the Holy Sea's signature weapon that she had arrived so late. Otherwise, she might have been able to discover the problem with the mutant fruit. In the end, such an unforeseen event occurred as soon as she got close to the divine tree area. Even the sword was suffering a backlash. Roar! On the other side, the Silvermoon Wolf King howled at the sky in a resplendent white light. He was also in a miserable state. His body was covered in blood, and there was a bloody hole in his chest. One of his arms hung limply at his side. This was a peerless expert. Even though he stood at the top of the pyramid, he was still wounded by the explosion of the silver walnut, and his body was covered in wounds. The Wolf King's blood flowed with a resplendent radiance. His eyes shot out a piercing silver light as he held a spear in his other hand. His arm was trembling violently. At this time, the 2 peerless experts understood that this was a trap prepared to kill them. There were experts hiding outside the sacred medicinal garden, ready to deal the final blow. Clang! The rusty greatsword and the lightning-like spear in the hands of the undead phoenix and the Silvermoon Wolf King emitted a resplendent holy radiance that illuminated the entire small world. They coughed up blood one after the other and finally threw down their weapons. It was like drawing water with a wicker basket. They could not suppress the mysterious weapon at all. Swoosh! They decisively turned around and left. Outside the sacred medicinal garden, the entire divine city was glowing with boundless energy that resisted the destructive power of the silver walnut explosion. Even now, the divine city was still suffused with a holy aura that blocked the aftermath. It was said that during the most glorious era of the Holy See 1 or 2,000 years ago, this city was like this every day. It was always peaceful and bright day and night. Hee. Schiller was laughing in the cathedral. Although he was old, his body was ramrod straight and enveloped in holy light. It's time for us to take action. His curly hair was glowing intensely and resplendently. The wrinkles on his face were like metallic veins as he exuded a powerful aura. At this moment, he was like a holy knight from ancient times. With a single step, the void trembled violently as he arrived on the street. With a loud clang, he blocked the Silvermoon Wolf King's attack with a greatsword in hand. The Wolf King's speed was astonishing. He was accompanied by a resplendent energy as he stretched out a large claw that almost tore the heaven and earth apart. As a peerless expert with 6 severed shackles, there was no need to doubt his strength. While maintaining his human form, he had transformed into a wolf claw that was shockingly large, enough to cover a small mountain. This was an ability that was close to divine. However, Schiller wore a calm smile on his face. He wasn't afraid at all. The great sword in his hand was extremely dazzling as a beam of light shot towards the heavens. He slashed forward with all his might, aiming to chop off the Wolf King's claw. Clang! A sound even more terrifying than thunder erupted from this place and reverberated in all directions. Within the sacred medicinal garden, A small number of king-level entities that hadn't died had just clambered up when the two peerless experts unleashed their earth-shattering attacks. Their bodies swayed and once again collapsed into a pool of blood. The all-out attack from the two experts was exceptionally terrifying. It was as if two suns had exploded. With them at the center, a silver wave swept out in all directions, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Thump! The Wolf King was sent flying. Many wounds had opened up on his body and blood was flowing freely. It wasn't that his strength was inferior to his opponents, but rather that the injuries he had suffered in the medicinal garden were too severe. Roar! The Silvermoon Wolf King roared. In the blink of an eye, the entire space seemed to have frozen. Schiller was momentarily dazed, his body and spirit somewhat rigid. This was an ability the Wolf King had obtained after severing a certain shackle. He transformed into a bolt of white lightning and charged forward. Of course, he didn't forget to swipe at Schiller's neck. Schiller was very strong. As a peerless expert, it was impossible for him to be killed in such a manner. At the last moment, the great sword crossed the air and blocked the incoming claw. Swoosh! The Silvermoon Wolf King didn't fight to the death with him. He directly charged forward, causing the air to explode on the street. The Wolf King's speed was simply too fast, several times the speed of sound. At their level, who could force him into such a state? The explosion of the silver walnut had broken one of his arms and pierced through his chest. Wolf King, you can't escape. Schiller was not in a hurry. He chased after the Wolf King at a leisurely pace. He looked relaxed, but his speed was frighteningly fast. At the very least, he hadn't lost the Silvermoon Wolf King and was even closing in on him. Old man, be careful. Don't throw your life away, the Arctic King said. He jumped down from the church and stood outside the sacred medicinal garden. There's a big fish inside, don't let him escape. Schiller's voice came from afar, warning the Arctic King. Boom! Suddenly, a violent explosion was heard from the sky. Two figures had appeared. One was a gigantic black dragon, and the other was a black phoenix, its entire body glowing with black light. It was as if a legend had come to life. The black dragon and the undead phoenix were locked in an intense battle. The sky was filled with draconic energy and black flames. They were fighting to the death. Chi! The undead phoenix coughed up blood and fled in a certain direction. The black dragon was in hot pursuit. Old man, don't hide. We already knew you were here, the Arctic King said towards the bloody ruins of the sacred medicinal garden. An old man stood up from the pile of corpses. He was coughing and covered in blood. Two terrifying beams of light shot out from his eyes. This was an expert with 6 severed shackles. In truth, the Vatican had a total of 6 experts. This person had been lying in wait all this time, but in the end, he was still discovered by Schiller. Kill! The old man didn't reveal his true form. He rushed over with a loud roar, wanting to kill his way out. Boom! An intense battle erupted. This was a showdown between peerless experts. The old man was wounded and stained with blood. His chest had already been split open and almost disintegrated under the bombardment of the silver walnut tree. Swoosh! Finally, he found an opportunity to escape. The Arctic King laughed coldly as he followed behind. From time to time, he would unleash a terrifying blast of energy, causing the old man to cough up blood continuously. The Vatican had quietened down. The entire sacred medicinal garden was covered in blood. The Beast King's fur, scales, and broken bones were strewn everywhere. Not many had survived. It's time for us to take action. Let's finish them off. It was at this time that a few men and women clad in radiant armor appeared. They were all king-level entities, and were rushing towards the sacred medicinal garden. Among them was a Vidus who had once led them around the city to familiarize themselves with the various places. Not far away, the Jilin King also appeared with a number of experts. He had been summoned back from the medicinal garden by the black dragon at the last moment. Only then did he realize how dangerous this place was, following which the Arctic King's subordinates also appeared. These people entered the medicinal garden and would finish off any living being they saw. Regardless of whether they were alive or not, they were decisive and calm. Hundreds of meters underground, Chu Feng, the yellow cattle, and the black yak were covered in wounds. Even though they had dug frantically, they were still injured by the energy of the silver walnuts. Their advantage over the others was that they had discovered something was amiss. They originally wanted to escape in one go, but in the end they were too late. At the last moment, Chu Feng used the diamond chakram to pierce through the ground. They rushed down and dug frantically. Only then did they manage to survive. What is this? A diamond? It's so big. The black yak dug out a scarlet crystal the size of an infant's fist from the wound on his buttock. Goddamn it, it hurts so much. You actually have more. The black yak cursed. There were several of these stones in the wound on his buttock. Yellow Cattle's eyes widened as he snatched it. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.